Let me pull my soapbox out to start because
Oh, geez.
yeah, I know. Mike's got wine. Great. And then we'll go around and do the usual introductions and get everybody's voice. So in the podcast, everybody knows, but I'm going to step up on here real quick. I'm a little frustrated today, and it's been a culmination of events, uh, pretty much for years. Excuse me. And if anyone thinks that this is geared toward one incident or one department, then maybe that incident or that department needs a look on its own, because you're picking up on something I'm probably not even talking about. But this is a pattern I'm seeing in the fire service. I'm seeing some of my mentors who are instructors and leaders in the fire service post about this as well. Not everybody's lucky enough to get to go to fires hundreds of times a year. I get that. I found myself a lot saying they don't know what they don't know for departments that maybe their tactics weren't up to snuff, or you look at something and okay, you give yourself the, oh, I wasn't there, right? I wasn't there, so I don't really know what they were up against. Sure, that works to an extent, but we don't really give the I wasn't there benefit of the doubt to anyone else, right? We do, like we kind of talked about last week, we do like our QA/QI for EMS, and we never go to the person there and say, well, you weren't there. The police citizens review board, that anytime a cop fires their gun, nobody goes to the citizens review board and says you weren't there. But that's like this protective bubble around egos or sensitivity or whatever that limits us from getting better in the fire service. And if we're not going to have accountability from outside, then how come we can't have accountability from the inside? Why or how do we call each other out in a respectful way, not just slinging mud on Facebook, not sending crappy messages, or not calling up and say, hey, what the hell were you guys thinking? But something's got to give. We are in a time where we have access to so many great resources online for training, for size up videos, even cooped up during a global pandemic. You can sit at home and watch size up videos from Stockton, my favorite place to watch those videos from. You can watch an entire fire attack and learn how much water you could really put out with 1 3/4 inches when it's an exterior fire primarily, versus thinking the whole house is off and calling it defensive. And yet, all of those resources are available. We have fire conferences all over the country. We have fire training groups popping up like weeds, to the point where I reconsidered starting my own repeatedly, because it's like, what the hell do I have to offer? There are that many of them. There are like 5 in this region of Northwest Ohio. Scott just posted, there's hundreds of free hours of training online. There's Scott Schuler posted that, or sent that in the chat. We have all these resources available to us, but I'm seeing a pattern that's frustrating the hell out of me. And instead of looking at tactics from the perspective of how are we serving the citizens, we're looking at tactics and decision-making and size ups from our people being safe. We signed up to take the place of a citizen's life if we need to. And yeah, sometimes we're going to go into an empty building, making sure there's not a citizen in there, and somebody's going to die. And that's awful. And I am not condoning being a suicidal firefighter and just not caring and just going into every burning building regardless of conditions. But if the conditions are good, or you've got a confirmed victim, or you've got a house that you're not sure if everybody's out, you should be doing everything for anybody who might be in there, up to and including putting yourself in that danger. And maybe I'm a little jaded because I have a different personal experience with this. I grew up with 4 cop parents, mom, dad, stepmom, stepdad. And I was just telling my brother today, as we were kind of venting about this, I never once thought, God, I really hope they don't die at work, which sounds screwed up, and I get that. But my take was, if something happens to mom or dad, or stepmom or stepdad, they had the best training, they had a good head on their shoulders, and they signed up to do it. If they don't come home, it was because they just weren't meant to. And I don't remember how old I was when I thought that, but I was definitely younger than I probably should have been to understand that concept. And now in the fire service, we are justifying the safety push, which yes, safety is important. Safety, though, as it says on the homepage of our website, comes from training and knowing what good conditions are and what bad conditions are. Safety comes from training. But safety is being used to cover up fear, because people don't know what they don't know. But I'm done saying that, because there are too many resources out there. There are too many people willing to help. There are people on some of these agencies, and I've been on some of these departments that needed a little boost. There are people at the bottom that see the need for change, that can be influential in that, probably more so than they think. And it's not happening. It is our responsibility in the fire service to be not only willing to call each other out, because I'll say it, I'm not God's gift to firefighting. I am not the best firefighter there is. I've been in a staff position since freaking November. I haven't been to a structure fire scene in months. I'm not going to go back out there tomorrow and kick butt. I'm going to need to get back in my groove if I get the chance to go to one. But the difference is, no matter how hard it is to take, I will take the criticism. I will go to the classes. I will buy the books, and I will try and improve. And I see some comments popping up. I'll hit those in a second. But how do we do that from department to department? We still have these walls up. They're kind of coming down in some places. But how do you see another department do something? And again, if you're attributing this to one event or one specific department, I guarantee you this is stuff that has driven me to develop entire classes. This is not geared toward one department or one issue. And again, if you think it is, that's probably something you need to address in your own head, because clearly you see deficiencies there. That's not what I'm doing. This is not targeted. This is, as the fire service and as people who are about the fire service, as you guys are, who are here because you want to talk about this stuff, we have to do better. We have to stop using safety to cover up fear. We have to be willing to listen to people, or to have people approach us and say, you know what, I'd like to help. But the fact that we have to be nervous to do that, to say, hey, I think we could look at your tactics and see if maybe there's a better way to do that. Or, hey, have you guys heard about this? We have to be more receptive to that, as receptive as we are on our own. We have to put the egos aside, because we're not here for our egos. We're not here for the ladies. We're not here for the cool t-shirts or the helmet stickers. We're here for the citizens. And we're not here to necessarily go home. Everybody goes home, to me, seatbelts and fitness, right? We don't kill that many firefighters comparably in structure fires. If everybody goes home, it should be because everybody goes home, the homeowner as well, or there was absolutely no chance for that person. Lewis posted the everyone goes home except, oh, that was perfect timing. This everyone goes home except the homeowner mentality of the modern fire service is ridiculous. We thought that things were going down the tubes when we switched from horses to motorized rigs. This is way worse. Training isn't the only answer. Everyone trains. This is still Lewis's comment. Going through the same motions, repeating mediocrity time after time is nothing more than an echo chamber of incompetence. Absolutely. Like, training is not the only answer, but it's an answer. And being open to training and being open to improvement, and being honest with ourselves and saying, you know what, I'm afraid. Every time I go to a fire, I have that moment where I think about our guys dying and I go, you know what, I could die in this fire. But then I let that part go, because that's the job I took. If I don't want that anymore, I won't be an accountant. I'll go back to TV news and talk for a living, as opposed to just doing it for fun with a bunch of people I like hanging out with on Sunday nights. But I don't want to do that. I know that that risk is there, and there needs to be a healthy level of fear, because that's human nature. And because that's how we do, on some level, stay aware and stay relatively safe. We reduce that risk. but we can't blanket over fear and call it safety. And I think that in the social media world right now, it's easier to look at a picture and go, that's defensive all day because there's fire blowing through the roof. When some people could tell you, probably a lot of people in this room, Division 2 could be absolutely clear. Division 1 could be perfectly clear. And you're saying it's defensive because you trained yourself on Facebook to do that. So I don't know what to do, because I am very much the kind of person that gives the benefit of the doubt, where I usually do say I wasn't there, or I don't, I can't see everything, or there's always two sides of the story. But at some point, we've got to be okay with at least asking each other questions and saying, hey, why did we do this? Or, hey, why did you guys do this? Please explain it to me, not because I'm trying to be a jerk, but because I really want to know and I want to talk through it. And if there's other options out there, I'm not telling you mine's right, but let's have the discussion. With that, I'm getting off my soapbox, and a lot more people have jumped on. So, holy cow.
Well, hello.
Hey, Mike Lord. Did you want to chime in before we do round robin here?
I think everybody knows my standing, basically. Most people that already know me.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, to an extent, I think other people's point of views on things is a good thing. If you're not willing to take somebody else's criticism, then you're not willing to change and you're not willing to better yourself. Because you're only going to see what you see. And I agree, nowadays people train. Safety is a good thing, but people train for that alone. And our job isn't safe. Our job, we all got into this job, I think most of us, to be heroes. To be honest, I know we all pick on each other for it, but we got into this job to save a life and to be there for people that when nobody else wants to be there. So if we're not going to do it, then what's the point of continuing to be in this career path, in this job choice? If you're not willing to do that, if you fear, like Barrett said, fear is a good thing, and fear will keep you alive, but also sometimes that can also hinder you from doing what you need to do for somebody else. I mean, it's tough to say, but I came in at the very end there, or a little bit there, but not always are all of us going to go home. I mean, and that's a risk we all knew getting into this job, is that there might be the possibility. Yeah, the idea is to come home at the end of the day, but there is always that chance that day, today's the last time you walk out your front door, and that can happen to anybody, not even in this job. So, I mean, I don't know, the mentality of not doing our job because we train to be scared. I don't know. I have so much I could go on for hours.
Yeah. And you all thought we were going to be talking about Euro helmets tonight. All of a sudden, shit got serious. All right. Let's do a quick round robin because people have popped on. I'll go around and actually, I was going to introduce people, but I'll just have you introduce yourselves because if they're listening to the podcast, they need to know what your voice sounds like. So let's start with Dan Turner. You're on. Starting with my Fireground Training peeps. Call them out. Make it quick, though.
Thanks.
We got real people to get to.
Dan Turner, Fireman. Nice to meet you. Fireground Training. See you. Bye.
Chief Musoff?
Mike Musoff. That was nice. Mike Musoff, Alan Clay Fire.
Ooh, Captain Bob Grogan.
Hey, everybody. Captain Bob Grogan, City of Waterville. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, good. How are you?
Hey, we're doing wonderful.
Watch that train behind you. It looks snowy. It's moving slow, though. Chief Francis.
Hello, my name is Jason Francis. I am with White House Fire.
Captain McNutt. Let's go White House. Oh, he's trying to figure it out.
Too many buttons. Captain McNutt, White House Fire. Hello,
all. Louis Elling. I'm wondering if that person's not going to introduce themselves. I think there might be some alibis in here. Scott Schuler.
My name is
Louis Elling. Sorry, go ahead. One sec, Scott. I'll get right back to you just because Louis or Lewis, I'm probably screwing it up, but sorry, I can't give you sound right now. My name is Louis Elling. I'm a former fire chief. There we go. All right, now Scott, now that I interrupted you twice.
No worries. My name is Scott Schuler. I'm retired law enforcement and volunteer in Western Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Welcome. Glad to see you. Glad to see new names tonight. This is awesome. Kyler Kepling.
Kyler Kepling, Delta Community Fire Department.
Greg's iPhone. Which Greg might this be? Oh no, it's silent Greg? All right, Greg, we'll come back to you. Patrick. Just a quick introduction to yourself.
Patrick Blucheck, Preston, Maryland, Fire Chief.
Awesome. Welcome. I'm not even going to try that last name, but the W last name, just because I know I'll screw it up.
David Walgosh, Assistant Chief, Preston Volunteer Fire Company.
Awesome. Welcome.
Just call him, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
That's me. Oh my gosh.
I like it. And then Chief Druid to round out the goodness, all the people we got. 17 people tonight.
Hi, everybody. Josh Druid, City of Rossford Fire Chief. Good evening.
Glad you made it out of the shower in time. Not if that's too much information.
I am.
Hi, Chief. I love you.
No, I love whoever that was. And if Eric Larson's really here, nice to see you tonight.
Oh, he commented, but I don't know if he made it in. Might have to. Chad, do you mind posting that link in the chat on my Facebook page? Need to get some of those other people in here. Those are some good peeps. All right, so mixed up the beginning a little bit, but that stuff it's been a brewing, and I'm kind of sick of making excuses, and I feel like I've been making excuses for people, and I feel like we can't get better unless we just kind of accept that we all need to get better. And if anybody wants to call me on my bullcrap, have at it, because that's part of the fun here is and I know this is going to shock you, but I am not always right, nor do I always have the best perspective. So if anybody else wants to jump in.
What are you talking about?
I mean, these are the things I say publicly. So Chief, did you catch that whole beginning part?
No, that's when I was still making fresh.
Gotcha. So we're talking about the fear equaling safety in some people's minds. And we have all these resources, all these training opportunities, all these training groups, all this free online training, all this ability to order any book in the world. I just ordered a book on building construction because I suck at it. Like, we have all this information and all these resources. And yet the big takeaway, or the pattern I'm seeing as a big takeaway in the internet, is people being scared and then saying, well, it's safety.
Oh, very interesting.
And people being, and this is going to sound harsh, but people being afraid to die on a job where they signed up to potentially trade their life for as citizens.
Yeah, that's the inherent danger to this. But if you train and read and keep up and do the things you sort of kind of mentioned, it typically lessens that scenario for you.
What is safety to you guys?
I think safety is kind of like what equates to dumb. Don't do anything dumb. That's the obvious one. And then I think that in terms of if we're talking straight up fireground, you got to sector stuff off and put people in those positions that have the training to report conditions that don't allow to make dumb decisions.
I think furthermore, something that Andy Frederick said, and I'm using this loosely, but something Andy Frederick said that safety is achieved by everyone on the fire ground for everyone if we just put the fire out. I mean, it's cool that we have, all these different sectors and groups that we can split into, and there's definitely a time and place for that. But there's also a time and the place for the, initial arriving companies to immediately go to work and put out fire. It's better for the victims. It's better for everyone that's responding to the call. It's better for the people that live in that community. So we can achieve safety by just doing our core job and being good at our core job. We can build in safety to everything that we do, and we do. We do a 360 when we arrive. We check the hand line. We lay supply line. We build safety into our initial actions, and that's how that gets completed. But that said, I think there's been a push to write off buildings or find excuses to write off buildings, and really we should be finding excuses to go into them. Finding reasons to go into them. I'll be searchable space, things like that. Because I don't want to write off anybody, because if that was my family, I wouldn't want anybody writing off. If that was my loved ones, I would hope that the fire department would make a push on that house and put the house out. But that's just me. I'm sure I'm alone in that thought too.
Am I generalizing too much, you guys?
No, I don't think so, because and again, I don't want to sound like I'm trading a checklist for tactics. I agree with what Dan just said, but you have to, I guess, as the incident commander, typically you have to balance all of that. And if you don't, then you're not going to have all the information maybe needed to make a good decision.
How much of the fear comes from our limits in training? Just to kind of like unwrap this, right? Like where is the root of this? If I'm not crazy, if nobody's calling that part out, what's the root of the fear? Aside from the normal human fear of like burning stuff, because I think that's like back to caveman days. But like burning stuff when we have all the stuff to go in and put it out and save the babies and nuns and stuff, where does that fear come from? Where are we failing in getting to that balance of healthy but not impeding our mission?
Some places there's just lack of experience, or you don't get that many working fires.
I
All
agree with
training
what
is not created
said.
equally.
What was that, Chief?
All training is not created equally. And if you're calling your training good training and it's not, and it's not realistic, then you're selling yourself short and selling everybody else short too. And it a lot comes down to resources too. Not everybody has great training facilities. You have to do, everybody's in the same boat. Do what you can do with what you're given and make the best of it. But if you're showing up and checking to make sure all the engines start and calling that 2 hours of training, well, you're just wasting time and money and effort.
And I know I've joked about Jenga extrication before, not so much joke, just like tongue in cheek, but also, yes, there are team building components to this, but I still want to say it. I've yet to put out a structure fire with a dodgeball. I'm just saying, if you're limited on time, maybe do stuff that's like, I don't know, job related.
But have you tried?
But have I tried? It's just so hard to get the dodgeball in my pocket with all the other ketchup dick stuff in there. It just really is. It's so challenging. I have like all this cool gear, all these little gadgets. You were going to say something else too, Kevin.
I think that's up next for the next NIST and UL study is the effect on dodgeballs and residential structure fire. So that's up next. Stay tuned.
Oh, are you on that panel? Because I just want to know, if you catch it, they're still out, right? Like that's the way the procedure should read still.
I believe that's up for debate with the next study.
Gotcha. Well, because it depends on if you're throwing it from inside the building or outside the building.
Hey, Barrett.
Yeah, Kyler.
As we're talking about this, I'm looking at some stuff on Facebook, and somebody shared a post that I think goes pretty well with our conversation currently.
Okay.
And that is, as a fire officer or leader, accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but never accept not trying. Do not be afraid of defeat. You are never so near to victory as when defeated in a good cause.
Damn.
And that's
You
all
just-
true. And it kind of leads back to last week's kitchen table where we were talking about, failure is just learning how to do it. That's where we pick up what we need to know. Unfortunately, losing somebody as a failure point to learn, it teaches really great stuff, but at the same time, that's not the best way to go about it either. But definitely, look back through the NIST reports and stuff and take from those experiences so you don't do that. But what I was chiming on earlier was with Chief Druid, was I agree with what he said. It's a lack of experience, and you have to be comfortable with what your teams are and who's arriving from the command standpoint. Mine from my department, I don't necessarily know who's going to be arriving on my first engine, my ladder truck. We could be calling from different departments because we have auto aids. We don't know what bodies are getting off that truck. I could have somebody that is day one 36-hour firefighter all the way up to a battalion chief for the city of Toledo. Like, how do I figure out my tactics on the way there when I don't know what crews I have? I have to establish what I got and kind of move forward from there.
I guess to follow up on that, because I mean, and I don't know how many of these folks know, but I wasn't always a career firefighter. I've worked on combination, part-time departments. So I'm not coming from just it's the big city, do it like us. Right. But I guess in that mindset, where do you, we have the basic standard set of performance and tactics. So, where's the struggle there that everybody's not, and not necessarily to your department, because I don't want you to put you on the spot that way, but if everyone's trained to the same level, quote unquote, whether it's fire 1 or fire 2, how are they, where's the deficiencies? Where else is the deficiency coming from that's changing your tactics?
One of them, we don't get fires every day. There's only so much you can do in training and keep it realistic, but I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to be learned on an actual fire scene, and we don't pop a fire once a week. So, I mean, I can have fire 2s that are been on the department for 3 years, but they're not available when we have a fire. So they've made 1 fire in 3 years. It's education can only take you so far, and then experience has to be involved somewhere.
Yeah, you got to have practical application with your training. And we went on automatic aid the other day and we arrived first. And the driver of the first arriving engine from the neighboring department has been on his department for 5 years. And this was his first quote unquote fire.
I mean, I didn't have a fire until I was a career firefighter, and I had 4 years on a couple different departments. I didn't have a first 2 on the line. It's just, it is hit or miss.
So you hope that the people that have received the training can bring that up and recall either through self-motivation, working at other places. One of the things that we still do is when the rig goes around, if it has an officer, the officer gives his number so that you know who is riding that right front seat, which will help garner your ability to hopefully give assignments.
Where are we losing some of the, we have the protection, we have the equipment, we have the training, even if it is the basic level training. I mean, there are police officers that, it's their first time going to a school shooting, but they don't hesitate at the door. And I know that's a little different than an IDLH where you have low visibility and stuff like that. But yes, on some level you absolutely need the experience, but I'm still confused on some of the hesitation, especially when it's, there's, we know that everybody's out, quote unquote. We have a report that everybody's out, so we're not going to go in. When that's like taking your boat out on every nice day and never taking it out on a storm. And oops, we got a couple people waiting. Taking your boat out and never taking it out on a storm, and then you go into the storm, which would be the equivalent of grandma's trapped upstairs, and you don't know what good conditions are or bad conditions are.
And I'll preface that with how many paid on call or volunteer police departments are there?
True. I would say there's a lot of part-time police departments, but you're right that in terms of the volunteer and part-time, or volunteer rather, or paid on call. Yeah, I see that.
The other piece of the pie is it's been prevalent the whole time that I've been at the Rossford Fire Department is I haven't seen anybody in my life ever pick up a periodical on that fire station. Fire engineering, fire rescue, firehouse, first responder news, anything. I've never seen anybody ever read a periodical to try to garner more information. Maybe they get it on the internet. I don't know. But that's another piece of your pie is not reading or watching a YouTube video or doing any self-study. I think that creates some of this. And the other part is, I'll lob this out there. I think a lot of people are dependent on the officer for guidance because we're lucky at our place and almost everybody that's an officer is full-time somewhere else. So they won't get me hurt. I don't, they make a lot of these calls. So if I'm involved, I kind of depend on his experience to make sure we don't get hurt or killed. I think that's me spitballing, by the way.
We have some trouble here in the county I'm in. We have some 50-year chiefs. And then in my 30 years, they're 2 jurisdictions away, so they're not necessarily on my mutual aid assignment. Never seen them at training. I'm a fire suppression instructor for the state of Pennsylvania. I've never seen these. I want to say there's probably 6 or 7. Never seen these guys or their people at a training, whether in our county or some other place, or bump into them at a spaghetti dinner or something and talk about, oh, what are you guys doing? And it's their mentality in their rural areas are, well, I'm the chief and this is what's going on. And if I say we're not going in, we're not going in. And they're actually hindering the ability of their firefighters. And there's no mandate here in Pennsylvania. You have to take the basics, but there's no standard for firefighter 1 or firefighter 2. And a lot of times, again, we have firemen that lack experience and in a house fire that they can go and make a really good hit on, they're not, because they're listening to a 50-year-old chief who has, zero. You talk to them about positive pressure fan, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And you're like, okay, like, hello. And that's where it's coming from. It's that culture. And you don't dare go against these people and get training and question them in these smaller departments. They run you out.
I think a lot of it too, Barrett, is what Scott was saying. But when you go through the initial training, you got to go through the JPRs for fire. You have to go through National Registry skill stations. But then people tend to disregard them and throw them out. And they're like, oh, we'll just come up with our own training. And one person's perspective, my perspective of something's different than your perspective. So why aren't we getting the JPRs back out? And why aren't we getting the National Registry skill sheets back out? Those are national standards. They're validated. They're a standard that you can train to.
Because it's dangerous to throw the 24-foot ladder by yourself. That's crazy to have to throw a 24-foot ladder for the state of Ohio checkoff.
Yeah.
When would you ever have to do that? Except maybe when you're doing a vent under search for a victim at Division 2 on the Charlie side. Like, I don't know. Why would you not want to do that? But you're right that I've had that argument with people that think that even the standards are nonsense. And it's like, how do you not understand? Like, how many people are you showing up with? Because I know it's less than I'm showing up with. And you're gonna tell me that you only need it's dangerous to have one person throwing a ladder by themselves? Or moving quickly on the fire ground is dangerous? Yeah, it's dangerous the first time you do it.
Yeah, and what happens when there's legal issues that come up and there's a panel of experts that say, what kind of standards do you train to? And you say, well, like 20 years ago, we went over National Registry stuff, or we went over the latest IFSTA JPRs, but they didn't work out for us, so we just threw them out. That's not going to go very far. And I think also what happens is the older generation firefighters, they have one set of way of doing things. And then you're like transitional attack and they're like, what's that? So I think with training everybody to the same standard
Mm-hmm.
and going through continuous skill stations with everybody, I think that's where it needs to be.
I'll chime in here. Tony Combs, Providence Fire, and at least to the left of me on my Brady Bunch screen is Captain Chad Eichel from Providence Fire, since you skipped us in the introductions. Quick little bit of housework since
My bad.
Table talks are
You guys are staples now.
generally a place where somebody's feelings are going to get hurt or somebody's going to say something stupid. I need to apologize to Mike Lord because I kind of threw him under the bus thinking I was being funny about his paramedic certification a couple of weeks ago. And I've had 2 weeks to think about it, and it was kind of a dick move on my part. So it's probably the only time you'll ever hear me apologize, Mike, but
You didn't. First off, you didn't hurt my feelings.
But we're talking about, I think you started talking off, leading in with the fear we're going to die. And for me personally, that's a non-issue. As you said, we signed up for a job that's a potential. I think the bigger fear is doing what I just did, saying, you know what, I was wrong on something, or fear of stating an opinion due to somebody already mentioned it, career suicide. You got somebody who's been there for 30 years that's going to run you out or pull you aside and say, shut your fucking mouth. Pardon my language for kitchen table talk. Shut your mouth. Don't, I got more time on the toilet than you got on the job, kid. Or one of those, folksy hugs that they'll throw out in front of a bunch of people to shame you. But we keep using the word standards, and while I agree the standards are good, to use a very loose stereotypical analogy, the non-union workers' opinion of union workers are all a bunch of lazy guys that are more than happy to meet the minimum qualification. I think where we fall short is we forget to emphasize that the minimum qualification or the standard is exactly that within our engine houses, within our individual departments, there needs to be an understood and often spoken level of expectation. Because I think in addition to guys being afraid of dying, and I think that's more, somebody already mentioned it, your training, if it's good training, really takes a lot of those fears out of the overall equation. But that the guys going in got to be able to trust the officer giving the orders outside. With my previous employer, there were battalion chiefs that you knew were great battalion chiefs. They run a good fire, was the way that it was said. And there were other battalion chiefs that your officer would turn around and go, fuck, so-and-so is going to be on this because they're filling in for so-and-so. So watch your ass, or if they order you to do something, think about it. So the level of trust has to go both ways. You got to know, especially in my current job out at Providence, we've got a mixed bag of, it's like Chex Mix. Sometimes you get, 4 peanuts, and if peanuts are your favorite thing and that's what's good for that situation, you're set. But, other times you get a cashew and a rotten piece of wheat check or something else that aren't just aren't going to work together right. Mm-hmm. Because of either lack of experience, lack of training, or lack of expectation. I think that there is fear, and I think twice in my career did I ever call command at my previous job, because we happened to be first due, and I was working at a slow engine house where none of the career guys wanted to be acting officers. So I had like 2.5 years on the job, and I was probably command for all of 3 minutes. Fear of responsibility for, what if I make the wrong call? What if I say, oh, hell yeah, this is let's go in and put this out, and something goes bad. That if you take care of the training, if you take care of the culture, and you raise the expectations in the engine house. Somebody mentioned getting a guy to open periodicals, or getting people to open periodicals. You know, there's times where it's video games that are, you know, the priority during the day. And I'm too old to play that shit unless it's, you know, one joystick and an orange button. Just like poker, I might as well just give you my money and then just walk away. Let you guys have your fun.
Who's playing video games for money? Never mind. Go on.
Well, no, nobody.
Oh,
But-
okay, good. I'm like, somebody's got you had, Tony.
Yeah, no. But I think that, you know, it's funny because I was outside shoveling my driveway today and I see he's on here, if he's still on here, Jake Hoffman or you, Barrett, that, you know, you're two guys that I know that have a fire career outside of your fire career, that are very passionate about what you do. It's hard enough to get guys to do the scheduled training, to show up for the scheduled training, let alone have an expectation that they might look up something on their own or look at something career oriented when they're off the clock, let alone when they're on the clock.
Oh, that's not cool. It makes you a nerd. Then you're just
Well,
like some piece of shit who loves the job too much.
Exactly. Or catch a dick.
Yeah. I didn't mean to say that earlier. It just slipped out.
That's all right. There's plenty of us here.
This episode brought to you by Heinz 57.
But I think that to wrap my little soapbox up, I think the standards are great, but I think the expectations that can be set by those in leadership positions, and I'm not saying you have to be an officer, because you can lead from the bottom up just by letting people observe your performance, letting people observe your routine. But there has to be a higher expectation, and there has to be a little bit of freedom for people to have hurt feelings and apologies to get made over making a suggestion or being passionate about something, or saying, hey, playing Jenga with the rescue tools is a crock of shit. What purpose is that serving? You know, because an argument can be made for dodgeball, in my opinion. It's going to get you, you know, some of the people that aren't going to exercise for shit.
And there are arguments to be made for everything. We all have our different opinions.
That are a safety risk because you might have to haul them out anyhow. Is a whole different issue. But fear is not just about dying. Fear is about, can I trust the guy with me? Can I trust the guy outside the building?
Mm-hmm.
And can I trust the environment in that we're all in this together to be able to share that opinion, to be able to share a mistake, and be told, shut the fuck up, this is not the time, and be able to get over that, or be told, hey, you know, why don't you tell me why you think that way? If you come to the table with a problem, come with the solution. So that's pretty much it. I hope I made some sense.
Always good to have you, even if I forget to introduce you. It's nothing personal. It's just like
Chad's
you're part of
those feelings are
you're an
probably
OG
really hurt.
now. It's like, yeah, well, Chad, I kind of gave him a shout out at the beginning. I did do a bad job. Captain Chad Eichel from Providence is about to say something about me being a jerk. Go on, Chad. And from Fireground Training now. Congratulations.
No, I'm not butthurt, Tony, just so you know. I think Jake has some good comments that are popping up here in the chat, though. I for one can agree that the current fire textbooks are trash. And then, yeah, minimums are just minimums.
I did like some of the comments. Oh, God.
I don't know if Jake wants to unmute and actually explain.
I asked him. He said he's still finishing dishes.
I'm here.
Oh, he's there. Oh, my God. All right. Well, I want. Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I'm Jake Hoffman. I'm a nobody from nowhere. What's up, Tony?
Are you stealing Chris Tobin's lines now?
Just that one, because I love that.
Yeah, Squad 5 fire training also taught me like 75% of what I know about the fire service and how to sit in front of a house and do a size up and stuff. Like look at where the layout is, and you get credit where credit's due.
Secondly, I'd like to let it be known that I have been bullied over being a ketchup dick by at least one individual on this Zoom call.
It was a beautiful image in removable car paint. Oh, I'm sorry. I ratted myself out.
No. So anyway, yeah, kind of like I was trying to type there as I was finishing dishes. Just I think anybody that's been hired by us over the last couple of years would attest to the fact that I'm a firm believer that those people that are writing the textbooks, most of the textbooks, I should say, there is one in particular that I really enjoy and I think is well written and well put together and has some good street smart knowledge, but not many schools are willing to use that, or departments are willing to use that for whatever reason. I've taught with that book and it's a fantastic book, but yeah, I think we need to remember that the IFSTA manual or whatever manual it is that you're using is just an initial, it's an introduction. It's a 101 course. We shouldn't have guys with 5 years on the job that are looking to the IFSTA manual for advice on forcible entry or ladders. Like I don't need a guy riding truck 17 in Toledo. Like that guy doesn't need to know what the NFPA 1932 is. That has absolutely no bearing on their job. But yeah, they should be pretty well read on all the things that aren't in the IFSTA manual, as far as a simple 4x4 ventilation hole versus like a Milwaukee cut, or a just different options doing a 798, or the fact that a trench cut was originally intended for H-style tenements in the war years of FDNY. It's never been intended for peak-proof dwellings. That's what a guy needs to know who's passed his state certification test. And that's the stuff that you're not finding in the book. So I just think that the book it's a necessary evil, and I think that it does serve a purpose. But I think that when you're talking about continuing training and talking about training being one of the things that I always like to say that I stole from my dad is for training to be worthwhile, it doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes long or 3 hours long, as long as it's realistic, it's practical, and it's challenging. You've gotten what you came for, right? Like that's all you can ask for, is realistic, practical, and challenging. Doesn't matter how long it is. And that is, I think, what's missing a lot of times, because when if you're using Target Solutions or what have you, Fire Rescue One Academy, and guys are going online and taking some little online course and passing some little feel-good test at the end of the month, that doesn't do anything except put a sour taste in people's mouth about training. So I'll get off that soapbox, but thanks
We're
for
just
having
passing
me.
the soapbox around tonight, so you're good. I think you weren't here for the first 10 minutes where I just like yelled at everybody.
No, yeah, you wouldn't let me in for like 10 minutes, so missed that.
I had
I'll
it
look for the
slightly
footage.
scrolled down. It'll be in the replay. I'm not good
Yeah.
at doing this at the same time as I'm talking. I get really into talking.
I'll send it to Turner.
What's that?
Just talking about Mandan.
Oh, I got you. Oh, sorry, I interrupted that.
No worries. I'll mute myself again.
I like the other comment you made though too, Jake. We need more chiefs to push everybody to be uncomfortable. Like if we're not uncomfortable in training, I feel like we're not training. Like everything I've done that's made me super uncomfortable was like the most beneficial shit I've ever done. Like our whole job is being uncomfortable or being relatively comfortable rather in horribly uncomfortable situations. And
Yeah,
so
and
if we're not there in training, we're not building anything. Not every time, but yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of people out there that are way smarter than me that know a lot about stress inoculation training and stuff like that. And I mean, breaking it down to a dumb fireman level, it's literally, we just need to crawl, walk, run. I think the problem is a lot of guys see on Facebook some of the rah-rah stuff about like, oh, our training has to be super challenging and make you uncomfortable. And they don't do enough to get people familiar and comfortable being uncomfortable. They just throw them right into those positions. And so I think you're exactly right. That starts in training. And going back to what Tony said, I'm pretty sure that the chief he was discussing is the same chief that I had in my mind. And it was the same chief that we worked for for a second when I worked with Tony. And that guy, I like one of the best chiefs I've ever worked for, because if you even give an inkling of a shit about this job, he will go out of his way to help you become a better firefighter. But if you don't care about this job, he will go out of his way to make your life miserable until you do care. And so I just thought that was great.
You're talking about Big Bob. We're on the same page.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people don't care for his flavor, but like you said, he is a guy that if you ask a question, he will bend over backwards to lead you and make you a better firefighter. I have never met somebody with more passion for the job who is unashamed. He should get a ketchup costume for Halloween.
You can be the one to tell him that for sure. We'll let you handle that.
I'll be happy to.
Yeah, I'd work for that guy any place, anytime, anywhere, doing anything. I mean, if he wanted me to run a goddamn ice cream truck, I would, and I'd try to do it as best as I could.
Yep.
not the right weather for it, but we understand the point. So we know that we're not going to have everybody that's as into it as us to sit here on now a Sunday night instead of Friday nights. At least we have a little more turnout when we moved it from like everybody's typical date night or drink night. We know not everybody's going to be like that. We know there are going to be the slugs, the people who got into this job for the paycheck, or they got on the volley department for a t-shirt, or thinking it was something completely different. And then we've got the people that are gung-ho, and they're going to be gung-ho no matter what. So how do we reach the people in the middle the best to bring them up to that level where they are reading and they are picking up articles, and they how do we defeat that drag down from the people who are like, dude, you're too into this, or you need to calm down, or you need to keep your mouth shut? Like, I get keep your mouth shut as a rookie to some extent, but also, like you said, Tony, if you got a chief that's willing to answer any question, I want the rookie to be asking questions. Or if you got anybody that's willing to answer a question, or at least entertain, if the rookie's sitting there saying, well, what if this happens? Awesome. That's training. That's a drill. That's just like, sitting around the kitchen table shooting the shit. Like, that's the stuff that, if you tell them to just sit there, they're not going to learn anything when they could be sitting at a table with people that are going to retire in 6 months or leave the department in 6 months because they've been doing it 30 years. So how do we show them that it's okay?
I only have one story for that.
Ooh, go ahead, Josh.
And for the longest time, this was pre-Barrett Dorner. But we struggled for the longest time about RIT, and we wanted to do some RIT training. We wanted to get some RIT equipment. We knew RIT was important, but we knew we had people that could barely catch a fucking hydrant. And we thought, well,
don't sugarcoat it, Chief. Tell us how you really feel.
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Yeah. And we went round and round as officers about, well, if we have to drill every Monday to get these people to catch a hydrant, how are we ever going to make them do RIT training? And we went round and round about this, for years. And then finally we just said, you know what, they either got to catch up or we're going to have to get them out. And that's all we did. And of course, at the end of the day, they follow along. So we were self-defeating, but at the end of the day, if you show them, they will learn. But you have to get out there to do that. And I think that's my story is, you can what if, or, again, this, that, and the other thing, but at the end of the day, for something as important as that for us, we said they either got to catch up or we got to figure out what to do, because it's too important. We've been hem hawing around about it, and we just have to get after it. And then at the end of the day, well, everybody kind of got it. We didn't really have any slackers, laggers, or bitchers or anything else. And you just hope to God that they'll remember the fundamental about catching a hydrant versus putting a RIT connection together with their SCBA.
There had to be at least one bitcher. Come on.
No, well, yeah. I'm sure there was somebody secretly back in the back just keeping that 1%er going there.
So to translate that out from just RIT, just the fact that we have crews that show up that I've been on these fires on previous departments I've been on that, it was mutual aid with a department I didn't work for, where you show up and they're saying, no, it's defensive. And you're looking at it going, what? Like, no, we need to go in and get that. How does the showing them, like, it's easier to show them in your own department. Like, hey, here's the bar you need to be at. Here's where we expect you to be. How do you share that expectation with those neighboring departments that are going to be responding with you, so you can avoid those kind of like, are you kidding conversations face to face? Because a lot of places are still trying to take walls down, and then you start questioning somebody else's tactics, whether your intent is purely improvement for the citizen as it should be, or they could still take it as, don't question what I'm doing.
Train together.
But if our training's not realistic to a real house fire, how do we know how they're really going to perform? because some of these places we did train together.
I think I haven't really been on one about the defensive. Why are we defensive versus going offensive? No, I've been on a couple fires, even in our first two here. But I've had a neighboring chief go, maybe we should back out of that because I'm seeing something that maybe you're not seeing, and I'm up for that. You got to be open to that, because again, there could be somebody there that might have a different view, take, experience, or something about it. But if you're going to go, well, you can go piss up a rope. This is what we're doing. Well, I never was too hip with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna do some mulching and beat around the bush with who or what that situation may have been, and just ask this: was there ever a time you said, "No, I think you're wrong"? Because again, it comes back to a level of experience, and I
can only recall this happening one time at Harbor Point.
Okay, for the record, I was not on that fire, so go ahead. I won't get myself in trouble now. Well,
and it was a ranch house on a basement, and it was a terrible weather condition day. And actually, not that I'm really excited about this, but it caught on fire twice, and it had nothing to do with us. It had blown in insulation, and I wasn't there in the first one, but I was there in the second one, and I had a neighboring chief go, hey, we're seeing some, I don't know, pick the condition, pick the situation. I'm thinking we should get somebody out of there. And of course, I'm not going to sit there and argue with you. You've obviously, as the sector officer, are a little closer to this than me. And I'm trying to think if I've ever been to a situation where somebody said we should do blank, and I said, we'll give it 5 more minutes. I would sure have, because well, sometimes you just do that too, but that one sticks in my mind a little bit more than the other example.
I'll jump in here real quick. My first training out at Providence, 3 years removed from working as a full-time firefighter. Our former leader was teaching search, residential search, and we're doing it on the bay floor. So we got tables flipped over on their side, assuming you're going to be crawling, as if they were walls, a couple, office chairs and a table for furniture in there. And within about 30 seconds, I'm standing there as the new guy, not wanting to go, hey, I used to be at Toledo Fire, fucking I know everything. And I watched this guy running the training, and I thought, man, he's doing this all wrong. He's acting like they're searching off a hose line. He's got these guys, and I actually had to pull the assistant or the lieutenant at the time aside and say, hey, what do I do here? Because I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm not trying to act like a know-it-all, but this is not, he's got one guy holding onto the back of the other guy's boot and saying, you can't let go of that guy's boot. You guys need to be physically connected the whole time. And I thought, fuck, this is wrong. And I ended up pulling the chief outside. I said, hey, I don't want to, sip out of your coffee cup, but in my opinion, I think you're doing this wrong. And if you want me to, I'd be happy to teach it. And he's like, well, what am I? And he got all pissed. And I said, look, I can teach it if you want. And he let me. And it went a lot better. He and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye for a while after that. But that was a time, since you asked, have you ever said, hey, you're doing it wrong? I did. And I'm glad I did, because it changed the way people felt about, well, why are we doing this? Or why can you explain what that is going on? And it to me, that was an obvious thing that anybody who was a fire 2 or a fire 1 in the room should have known and should have spoken up and didn't. And I felt obligated to do so. And I'm not bragging either. It was more of a, this is going to get somebody killed or leave somebody that should be otherwise saved dead. This is horseshit. I don't want to go into a fire with people searching like this, because then I'm going to be doing the absolute wrong fucking thing as far as they're concerned. We all need to get on the same page. So, and that's that fear again, fear of pissing somebody off. pissing somebody off who outranks me and has the power to say, you don't work here anymore.
And that's the
worked out
shitty
okay.
part. Like, that's the thing that people are measuring when they're thinking about speaking up. And I'll be honest, I've thought the same thing. I don't want to piss certain people off. But when did asking questions to understand or to spark a conversation or to open doors, like the whole, like, I just don't understand the fire service, that we're so full of ourselves. I don't know what it is that we can't be okay saying, hey, we might not have done that great.
A bunch of egomaniacs with an inferiority complex.
I take that personally. But
Say
so
take that or represent that.
Yes, all of the above. It's like you guys have seen my diagnoses. Here's where I'm at now, right? Because being in our own department is one battle where we're looking at stuff and going, okay, we need to make this better. And we have the control from our level to at least, our circle of influence, right? Our crews, the group that, like at Rossford, we had a really tight group of people that hung out at Perrysburg Township, Jake and Chris Hartford, Joe Hoffman. I'm just adding brothers to Jake's family.
That's a good one there.
Basically a brother. But like we had clusters of people that were really into it. And so we could influence things, when we saw that there was maybe a push and we could do that. But so let me pose this to you guys, especially since we have a few chiefs in the room. So now let's take it out of our own. And I'm trying to turn it this way because yes, we could talk about inside our own department a bunch, but let's say your neighboring department or on top of that, your neighboring department where your family lives, your aunts and uncles or your grandparents or whatever, you see, a great Ben Swanson Glass City Fire photos picture of them doing something completely asinine in terms of tactics based on what you're seeing. And again, I used to, as of like 3 hours ago, I used to say I wasn't there, I don't get it. And I don't want to say that anymore because just because it's not true or it's not just because I don't have all the information doesn't mean it's not true. And so I'd rather call and ask somebody and say, hey, what was going on in this picture? Like, what were you guys thinking? What was the tactic? But when that stuff happens, and I've heard the stories, all of a sudden, like somebody, and I didn't do this, but somebody's chief is getting an email saying, was this person representing you in this email? And it was very much like just like, hey, I'm a concerned citizen at this point, but you can go rat me out to my chief if you want to. I just wanted to talk to you. So how do we, as people in the fire service trying to put the thing first, the citizens first, that should be freaking first, caught myself, thank God. Not as good. I didn't let it slide like Tony did twice. You guys can
Just
cuss.
say
I just feel like I'm
fuck,
in
come
trouble. We'll see. I already said catch up, Dick. Now I've said it twice. So we're supposed to put the citizens first, but we're afraid to piss people off. We're afraid to lose our jobs because we all have that fear, right? That level of self-preservation. But now we see our neighboring department that we're expected to respond with on a call doing something really stupid in that one picture, and we just want to know more. Innocently want to know more to potentially guide them in a different direction. How the hell do we do that? Or do we?
Nah, that could make everybody itch. You gotta be the right guy with the right in the know about
Why?
that.
Why can't we just ask each other? And
Well,
I'm not
saying,
arguing with you, but like I'm arguing with you.
So what I'm saying is I wouldn't call up Brian Bird and go, what the fuck was engine 14 doing there? I'm not going to do that. Now I might see who might be on engine 14 that day, or hey, were you on that fire? What was happening with that? But I'm not. I mean, like I said, you got to know the right person that could contact that to get that information. I think, or whatever the story is, or I don't. You could do that, but it's not going to be received well, I think.
And that's my question: is there a way to fix that? That it could be received well, understanding that. Like, yeah, if you call them and go, what the hell were you doing? I can't believe you're that stupid. Like, yeah, that's not going to be received well. But if I call and say, hey, I saw this picture. I just want to understand what was going on because I'm obviously just looking at a picture. And I, if you see me doing something that looks odd, I want you to call me and ask me,
Yeah, I don't know. Plus, the bigger the organization, the harder it's going to be to get the answer.
True.
So I'm just thinking of it in our little arena over here, but yeah, I don't know. That's just it's kind of weird. And you know how we can avoid all this? Well, I thought we were talking about transport engines.
Oh my God. Where's Jake? Hey, Joe, you got muted.
What time does that come on?
It's been too long, but now I'm just upset and probably gonna go just strangle myself.
What?
I still love you, but I can't believe you brought that up.
That was part of the discussion last week. That's how it got started.
Well,
but we don't
this
have
has
most
been
of
a
the
great
key
first
players in
only
that
time
discussion.
at the kitchen table.
We're and I don't think it's strangulation. I believe it's called auto. You know what? Never mind.
I wasn't gonna go there either, but
You know, we might as well. I'm already probably going to be in trouble for something. It's always funny until the next day you find out you're actually in trouble for something. Yeah, Euro helmets are still on the list for tonight, but we kind of upended tonight's programming in lieu of Chad's still waiting to put his on. So I guess I'm just back to the beginning. I'm just frustrated because I don't know how to get to the point where it's okay to ask questions in the best interest of the citizens. And I get, like, you know, try and get it from people who are there, but it's like, okay, so if it was the incident commander and it's somebody you don't really know, wouldn't you rather go to that source and ask them? Like, I'm, you know, if oh, go ahead. Sorry, Chief.
I think the issue is, in your eyes, it's political. So, you know, like if you want to say something to another chief or another a firefighter incident commander that was in that jurisdiction, it's more perceived as I'm going to get butthurt over it, for example. And why are you coming into my kingdom and saying something about my guys the way that we treat things, you know? Because obviously smaller rural fire departments are obviously different than tactics with bigger metropolitan fire departments with, you know, hose lays, whatever that you might perceive things at. So I think that could be the issue.
Well, and again, I'm not just talking about me, but kind of the barriers of like what's limiting us. And I'll give you this example. So Rising Sun called us. I know I've talked about them before. Small department in Wood County. I wish Chief Cox was on to make sure I get these numbers right because I don't have them in front of me. Maybe 150 runs a year, I believe. Most of those are EMS first response. And they called us a month after they made a grab from a fire. And it's like, holy crap, like these guys are squared away. We've been working with them on training for 2 years because they called and said, hey, we heard about you guys and we want to get up to speed on what's expected of us. And Jake, I see your hand. I'll get to you in 1 second. What's expected of us in like the modern fire ground, right? Which is awesome of them to reach out. Not everybody's going to do that. But I also want to say that like, that's where, to me, the professional firefighter thing does not have anything to do with whether you're getting paid or part paid or paid on call or volunteer. It's just, if you're going to live up to the standard that I think we all understand, which is doing the best thing by the citizens. And so I guess that standard doesn't matter to the extent of, you know, tactics or department size or anything like that. Sure, there's going to be limitations, but your ultimate goal should be the citizens. And so when that falls short, how do you bring it up? I mean, Jake, go ahead.
I think part of it is also, I mean, we kind of alluded to it earlier, but humility and also just realizing that you're going to make a mistake every time you go out the door. Like I have yet to not make a mistake at a fire, and I'm way past the point of caring about how that appears. And I'm more than happy to tell people about any mistake that I've made. Like one of the stories that I tell people all the time is how jumping at a fire with reports of people trapped, doing a search in high heat and low visibility. I jumped up on the bed to clear the bed, and for about a split second, I thought I was dying, and the whole place had collapsed because I jumped onto a king size water bed, and it just threw me off. And like I tell the story all the time, and I was so afraid to tell anybody at work, and I finally did a couple months later, and it was funny to laugh about. But like I've gotten past the point of caring about sharing those mistakes, and I think part of it also comes in that there's a really good book. It's called The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. If anybody actually enjoys reading, I would highly suggest that book. It's fantastic, and basically it's just talking about how look at social media, look at anything now. Anybody thinks that you don't have to be an expert. You can just Google something real quick and presto changeo, your opinion is as valid as somebody else's, which not that everybody can't have an opinion, but just because two people do the same thing doesn't mean that their opinion's equal. There's a whole bunch of examples in there, but for example, I mean, if I'm trying to be a baseball pitcher, would I rather learn from a coach at the Perrysburg Little League or from Nolan Ryan? I mean, there is a value to expertise. And I think in the fire department, a lot of times, whether it's in your own department or among your peers in the area, and not only this area, but anywhere, people are too afraid to say that they might not be the expert for that. Like if somebody asks me a question about rural water supply, I'm going to send them over towards Chief Musil. I'm not going to answer that question. Yeah, I can pull a draft, but I'm not experienced at rural water supply or rural firefighting, like you said, Barrett. I mean, we both have started and worked at smaller departments and more rural places as well. But that's not my expertise. If somebody's got a question about 12 leads, I'm probably going to throw them over towards Chief Francis or Chief Druid. I'm not a paramedic. If it doesn't involve blood pressures or bullet holes, I'm probably not your guy. So I'm also not going to be teaching any classes about engine company operations. I don't ride an engine very often. When I do, I'm typically not even the guy with the hose in my hand. Like, that's not my thing. So I think part of it is being humble and being willing to accept not even necessarily critique, but just questions. And then also realizing that just because I have a Fire 2 card and I'm a paid firefighter, I don't have to give you some answer, whether it's right or not. I can very easily say, hey, you know what? Barrett knows more about that than I do. Why don't you go ask Barrett? Here's his number. And I think that all just gets diluted when everybody feels like they have to know everything or they're going to look like an idiot, which isn't the case.
Well, and Kyler, I saw your hand up. I'll get to you in 1 second. But the one thing I want to say with that, when Mikey Torres was on the first kitchen table talk, that was something we talked about briefly, was look at all the information that's available on Facebook in super detailed information from engine company ops down to like, you know, the flow per second stuff, or the, you know, how you can get the most out of your hydrant. And then you look at some of this truck company stuff, and then you look at some of this rescues, and it's like, Mikey and I were talking, and it's like, don't you just feel like a piece of crap for not knowing all this stuff? It's like, there's so much information out there. Sometimes it gets overwhelming to the point where it's like, I should know all this. But that is, as he said, kind of talking me down from my ledge, that's impossible. We're not all going to be subject matter experts on every subject in the fire service. It's not going to happen. And that's why, you know, typically, historically, there were engine companies and truck companies and people that mastered in certain things. And yeah, Scott just mentioned YouTube and its abilities too. But we, you know, especially with people like, well, if you don't know this, you're a piece of crap. It's like, no, just know what you need to know. And then, like Jake was saying, you know, if somebody calls me for a RIT class, I'm like, call Squad 5, call Jake Hoffman. He's the guy who teaches that stuff. That's not my forte. And I also don't teach engine company operations. There's a drill at the academy that I don't think it's named after me, thank God, but it's because I screwed something up. And same sort of thing. Like, I used to beat the crap out of myself for mistakes that I made. And then I realized everybody makes mistakes. We talked about that briefly last week. But I think that, yeah, that's a big thing we hit in my instructor class right now too, is how many people just read the PowerPoint because they don't know anything about the topic, instead of finding someone who knows something about the topic. Or, God forbid, they're the one who studies that because they're a nerd about it, and use the nerds. That's what the nerds are there for. Kyler, you had something to add.
Mine was going back more along the, you know, reaching out to other people about tactics use, stuff like that.
Okay.
As far as the, you know, the solution, I can't say I know what it is, but I think to an extent, Chief Francis hit kind of what I was thinking. And I think a lot of it boils down to, I guess, if you will, a pride thing, because unfortunately, typically firefighters don't like getting questioned. And not that you're questioning them, but that's the way they're going to perceive it. And it's something I think needs changed, because it can be used as an educational moment, not a questioning moment, like what people try to, or I shouldn't say try, or how they perceive it. And that's the issue, is I think how they perceive it is ultimately what it comes back to, is they don't
Right.
like getting questioned.
Yeah, perception is always gonna drive the reality. I mean, you can have the best intentions in the world, and how they perceive it is still gonna drive it. So let me ask you this: if there was, we'll go with Fulton County for you. So if Fulton County had, in some form or capacity, a group of people from each of the fire departments represented in Fulton County, that anytime there was like a major incident, quote unquote, like predetermined by whoever, by that group or the Fire Chiefs Association or whatever, that, hey, anytime we have a victim, anytime we have an injury, every time we have a structure fire, because they're few and far between, we look at that in detail, no matter what department it is, no matter what the outcome was, and look at it in the detail that we treat, or that we should treat, our after action reports like NIOSH reports without a firefighter death, and pick it apart so we can learn from that, and we all learn from it. It's uniform, it's fair across the board, it's represented. Is that a way to go about it, to make everybody to get, I mean, yeah, there's the buy-in part of that, but like to get everybody on the equal playing field of, look, we're all trying to improve. So
I would honestly be ecstatic if we just did PIAs.
Yeah, the post-incident analysis. Yeah, and I changed that out for after action reports, but same concept. Yeah, let's look at it with a fine-tooth comb, because that successful failure thing, right? Everything went well, everybody went home, but the homeowner didn't go home, or the house burned to the ground. But yeah, we were successful. We don't need to look at this and see what we could have done better. But then you ask questions for that fire, people get up in arms. So what if you just said across the board, we're going to look at every fire in Fulton County or Wood County or Lucas County, whatever it is, and we're going to have the same people do it for 2 years at a time, representatives from each department? Am I crazy to think that would be a more accepted option, knowing that there'd be a buy-in step in the first place?
Yeah, if you got the buy-in, I could see that potentially being a viable route to go, because then, you're looking at every fire. I mean, in Fulton County, there's probably 50 or 100 fires a year, so you're going to be busy doing it, but
the benefit is for the citizens.
Correct.
And if you focus on that part of it,
and you're not singling anybody out or making anybody think like they're getting, or feel like they're getting singled out, I think, because a lot of it is people don't like getting singled out or thrown, I guess, if you will, thrown under the bus.
And there's still a chance they're going to feel singled out when it's their fire that comes up for review.
Yeah. Another department I work on, we do PIAs after any fire or accident. Any. No ifs, ands, or buts. It could be a trash can fire in the middle of a wide open field that stayed in the trash can. We're going to do a PIA.
Damn.
And a lot of times our PIAs last an hour or two, minimum, depending on the extent of the incident. But a lot of times the extent of the best conversation is not in the PIA. We leave the PIA, we all go to the kitchen table, grab a cup of coffee or a pop or whatever, and we may talk for our next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shifts over that incident. And the longer it drags out, as interesting as it may sound, a lot of times more stuff gets drug out. We dig deeper, we talk more in depth, and that's honestly some of the best PIAs we do, is just sitting there like we're doing tonight, just around the kitchen table.
My county.
What's that? Yeah, it is now. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, my county, never. We're 28 rural fire departments, and if you dare open your mouth and talk about somebody else's fire, or they get wind of it, you're toast. We have a neighboring jurisdiction, smaller department. They probably run 35, 40 calls a year. They had a house fire 2 blocks from their firehouse. We were activated as volunteers, went to one of our substations, grabbed a piece, drove 10 minutes down the road. We beat their first piece out of their station, and so angry and upset about it, we're no longer on their alarm response. And they had a fatal fire here a year ago, and I've got a station that's got live-in college kids that's 8 minutes up the road, didn't never call fire trapment, and they weren't the first department on scene in their jurisdiction for fatal fire. And like we talked about earlier, never made an aggressive interior attack knowing they had confirmed entrapment. The homeowner was on the smoke-filled, unburnt left side of the structure, and a fire was to the right, never went inside, never. And we sit here and we're like, what are you doing? You got to call. You got to, we got aggressive people to come down and help you. And
or just go in. If you're not going to call anybody else, do your freaking job. And so you're former law enforcement, Scott. How the fuck are these people not being charged? I said it. Sorry.
Well, the problem becomes an issue of, families not knowing enough. I mean, it's rural firefighting in, Western Pennsylvania. It is, man, there's probably, Allegheny County, which is right around Pittsburgh, they got 170 some volunteer departments that some are 2 or 3 blocks away. Now, over in Indiana County, where I'm at, that's not such the case with 28 departments that, throughout the county. But municipalities, again, the local municipalities, they say all the time, I'm like, how does the township here in Pennsylvania, it's either a borough or township supervisors, how do they not hold those people accountable for, hey, we had a resident who died, you didn't make an aggressive entry, like, what are you doing? Why didn't you call these people from mutual aid? And I just, we're running a class here in out of Cambria County, which is on the other side of us, and they're doing this leadership series, and we had an attorney who's a fireman, of 30 years, a fire chief, and he talked about liability and that stuff, and it's like, a lot of these people, it's in one ear and the other. But one of the other things you were talking about, you were talking about people and their specialties, and like you said, if you're in truck companies, and pressure, the pumps and friction loss and all these different things, and in law enforcement, being full time that way, you picked we basically put you in a, if you're going to be a firearms instructor, you're a firearms instructor, and you were in that for 25 years. So the defensive tactics guy was defensive tactics, the taser guy was the taser guy, and y'all had your, I know the taser. You point it, little red dot hits the guy, pull the trigger, and the probes come out and hit him, and you walk over and say, ha ha, caught ya, but it's different from the firearms training. But that's the kind of lane that we stayed in, and it was of a 20-man department that I retired from. When you had a firearms question, you went to the firearms guy, but we also, like I said, the difference between, paid and volunteer. My problem is I can't force my volunteers to come train. And if they get butt hurt because you correct them and do something, you might not see them for a while. Whereas when I work with the police department and he said, hey, I don't like the way that goes, like, okay, but training's there even, department wide were, few and far between. It was 2 or 3 guys that, hey, they're going to go to this class and they're going to try to teach a little bit here and do these different things. So, but yeah, it's tough in the volunteer side. Like, I don't even know who's coming, like you said, to the next fire. And we just had training last Thursday, and I got a guy who will not go on a roof. And I'm like, okay, I'll go with you. And the pitch was like, climbing to the top of the aerial was taller than this roof, 1 story. And I'm like, come on, man. Well, no. And it just, I'm like, what are you going to do when you're the only guy left that has to do this job? Like, come on, man, you help me out.
And then God forbid you tell him to find another, like, because then you got I'm losing a volunteer who might go but he's going to go in a burning building if he's not going to go on the roof. Like, and that's where you get in that crappy volunteer spot where it's like, I need the bodies. He might be able to do something else. But also, if he's this much of a problem now, do you tell him maybe this isn't cut out for you? But then the butt hurt happens and you get in this, ugh.
And it's what are you losing? What are you losing if you're losing a guy that isn't willing to do it anyhow? If he's not going to do it when he's there, it's somebody who can't be counted on whether he's physically there or not.
But the problem is that, it's an issue of popularity. I was the fire chief last year. This year, I'm not the fire chief because those people I corrected and had words with and, tried to motivate and don't like my attitude. This year, I wasn't the popular vote. So now I'm, back to being a black hat and like, hey, I'm over here operating the peace. And that mentality goes on. Like now when that guy is, it's like, hey man, you're still not going to the roof, like, I don't know. It makes it difficult.
I can't even imagine those circumstances and that style of, you piss people off by calling them out for not doing their job. And then you lose somebody who's in a leadership position for doing what a leader's supposed to do. That blows my mind. But when it's a popular vote and a majority and wow, I want to pull something out of there. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I just wanted to look at the participants because I put this out to my department about people coming.
Oh, nice.
I ran 200 fire calls last year, and that's not tooting my own horn. The guy I lost to ran 23, and that's the mentality that I'm up against. That now the popular guy who hangs out with the crowd and this is terrible versus what's right for the department. And I've always said, if you're voting for me because I'm popular, you're stupid. You need to vote for me because when your chips are down and the burning down around you, we're going to make the right decision to keep everybody alive. So it's just tough. It's tough to swallow.
I want to pull something out, Scott, that you had said earlier about, the citizens not knowing, because that's a little throwback to a discussion we had last week and that I mentioned earlier in reflection that and I'll use the phrase I used last week. You kill somebody's family member because you gave them the wrong drug, the family sues you. You, again, coming from a family of police officers, you shoot somebody, family sues you. You burn somebody's house down, they show up at the fucking firehouse with a plate of cookies saying, hey, thanks for trying. Because it's this force of nature thing. And they just think that, well, you were up against, an act of God and there's no accountability. So let me ask you this. If you go, and this is open to anybody, if you go and try to any of these diplomatic ways we talked about, right? To try and raise that concern. You talked about that department that they knew the victim was inside. They didn't go inside the burning building to do their job, but nobody knows beyond the firefighters that know. At what point, when we go the politically correct routes and through the people that we know at that department and we realize nothing's going to change, at what point is it our responsibility to be what some people might call a brother effer? At what point is it our responsibility to find a way to let that family know so they can address it to save lives in the future? At what point do we become complicit in that by knowing and not doing anything?
I think that's when you have to be willing to fall on the sword and recognize that you're going to be the hero, but you're probably going to lose your job. You're going to bring something important to light. You're going to say the thing that everybody else is afraid to say, and it's going to cost you dearly. But as a result of your sacrifice or willingness to lay it out there for everybody to get, the end result might be you're going to have to retrain to find a different effing job, or maybe go to another department where, oh, you're the rat from the last place is going to follow you, based on you're a buddy fucker or whatever the term is. But in a situation like that, we dance around, and I'll say it delicately. We're always worried about upsetting the trustees of our municipality or township.
Council people, the mayor, the people that are popular in that town.
Geez, what's going to happen if we don't have them on our side? They can close us down. If he's worried about getting reelected, or if he's worried about people's opinion of him, he should worry harder to the point where I don't have to stand up and say something. If me going to, the call for action version of whatever news outlet is out there, sorry to say it, but I'm the guy that's going to do it. I've been the guy in union meetings in my current job where 15 guys in the shop are all bitching. Management comes in and they say, hey, we understand, there's a couple issues you guys want to talk about. And they're all looking at me. Oh, you speak really well, Tony. You go ahead and talk. I say it. And then management goes, well, who else feels this way?
Nobody raises their hand.
The fuckers are all sitting on their hands. And I'm like, you cowards, you're a bunch of cowards. And that's again, goes back to fear. If you love this job this much, love it enough to risk it.
Writing that down, but also, yeah, I just don't know how. I just don't know how you can. And again, Scott, I'm pulling a hypothetical from your example. So I'm not trying at all to call into question anything that did or did not happen with you, because I don't know those details and it's not my business. But also, I think we've all found ourselves in that situation in some form or fashion where, Tony, I think you were talking about kind of inside your own department. And that's one whole thing where you're risking a lot more, and you're still making a risk when it's like in Scott's situation, it's that neighboring department that you're like, oh my God, that person died. Maybe that person was going to die anyway, but we'll never know because they didn't do their job. And the family's not going to know. The family's not going to know. The city's not going to know. The community's not going to know. Don't they need to know? Or is that my crazy journalist, evil media mind coming back to haunt me?
No,
I think
they'll figure it out. I think that you have
really
to.
Will they? Like we know more than they do. Like it's not EMS where somebody else is going to look at it. It's not a police shooting review board. There's nobody that comes in.
In my current city job, as a glorified swing set repairman, mulch spreader for the Parks Department, I'm also the AED and fire extinguisher coordinator for all our division's buildings. We've had 14 AEDs that have expired pads, and by expired I mean expired in 2014 and expired in 2016. So technically out of service, but they won't budget the $2,500 year in, year out that it's going to take to get all of them back in service. One of the other buildings in Toledo, that is a city-owned building, had an incident. A guy went down. Somebody started CPR. They activated 911. They went and got the AED, not one of mine, put it on. The battery was fucking dead. Their commissioner called me and said, hey, can you tell me what was the matter with this AED? I said, show me the monthly check. Did somebody open it, make sure that nobody dicked with it, et cetera? And she said, well, it hasn't been checked in a while. I said, well, you're screwed. And she goes, well, why am I screwed? Who's going to know? And I said, any unconscious person in Lucas County, to my knowledge, you're going to get a life squad. And I know on our reports, when you are doing a patient care report or PCR, it says, was prior aid rendered or given? And if you hit yes, there's a drop-down box that says by who, what was done, and what was the outcome. So if, and I know it was in Lucas County, if the medics that responded to that run did their job, their patient care report is going to say, yes, an AED was applied. However, it was non-functional due to a low battery or whatever. So an attorney, half of an attorney, should be able to look at that. So in that case, that's how they're going to find out. But back to my original point of you find a way to help them find out. My favorite saying in the world, and I've had to apply it to myself 1,000 times in my life, and I probably will 1,000 more, is a man who said he never had the chance to make a difference or make a change, never had the courage to do so. Now I'm done.
And for every time you think you haven't contributed anything, there are two quotes that if I was fast enough to talk and write things down, I would have written them down, but I'm going to watch it later. Does anybody
Barrett?
think it's, yeah, Chief.
So I've got a couple things I want to bring up. With Scott's scenario with the fire, wouldn't the arson investigator come up with something with that about how long that body was dead? Or
yeah, I'm not sure. We Pennsylvania State Police in Pennsylvania are the leading fire investigation for outside of city of big cities. So Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, maybe a little, somebody maybe has a full-time fire department might have one, but most places. So ours was the neighboring fatal fire was investigated by the Pennsylvania State Police Fire Marshal. And I don't know what his findings were.
Gotcha. And then the other thing with the AEDs, I've never really looked into it that far for inspections, but I always hold the businesses and the churches accountable for the AEDs. I mean, if there's an AED, I check it. And if I ask them for the monthly checks on that too, or the weekly checks on that. And if they don't do it, I make a binder up and I keep putting it down as a violation until it's fixed. So now we have
we have
fee
an
schedule.
administrative policy in the city of Toledo. that
Gotcha.
Dictates that they're supposed to be checked and that there's supposed to be a person assigned to check them. And it's fucking not being done.
Yeah. So we have a fee schedule now. So we have the initial inspection that's free. The second inspection is free. But if you go there the third time for a violation, they get charged.
Okay. And so I guess in that instance, again, first of all, I want to check on Jake Hoffman. We've been talking about EMS supplies for a little while. And Jake, are you all right? Oh,
No.
just checking your safety.
Carry on.
So back to but and that's we've got these checks, and yeah, maybe they don't work, but okay, going back to Chief Francis, your question about I cannot, and I can refer to some arson investigators, one in particular, to find out for sure. And then, they'll refer me to the coroner's investigators, but I don't know that they can necessarily determine the time other than smoke inhalation and then burned, or, I don't think it's not like CSI as far as I've ever understood. And that's just from, nice kitchen table dinners with my family. One of my stepdad is a crime scene investigator and my dad's an arson investigator. So not at the same table. That'd be awkward because my parents are divorced, but between their two stories, like that stuff doesn't line up with the CSI stuff where it's like, oh, they died before the crews could even get on scene. It's maybe sometimes depending on the fire progression or whatever, but I would also be shocked if an investigator put in a report, like, yeah, in some form or fashion, they would have been saved if the fire crews had made it in there sooner. You know what I mean?
No,
I don't think they're going to make it
I
that blatant, but somebody should.
That.
Like, and that's what I'm getting at is like, how do we apply the same level of accountability that we allegedly get from an EMS QA/QI program, or how do we get a set of eyes on those reports? But even those reports don't have all the information because we're not even documenting. Brian Brush has just started in a few years, as far as I know, it goes back, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but just started this push to document rescues because there's no way to document rescues currently. So if we aren't documenting rescues or rescues that weren't made in the end for report anyway, and all the coroner's report and the investigator's report is giving us the origin and the spread, and if the person died before or after the smoke inhalation, then I guess that's where I'm struggling, where I'm like, I see this deficit in the fire service where we're not taking a critical eye to incidents that need a critical eye. And some departments are. Kyler's example of his department that, if Oscar the Grouch's house catches on fire, they're going to damn well drag their happy asses down to Sesame Street and look into it and learn about it and go stretch hose past Snuffleupagus and practice that trash fire again. Like, that's awesome, but not everybody's doing that. And the places that are going to be less inclined, like Scott's example, to be aggressive and to do the job that they are supposed to do and to save citizens are going to be the ones that are probably the most resistant to having somebody look at their stuff. And it's like, how do we, I get that the fire service is screwed up, right? In theory, because we talked about like law enforcement and how there's not very many volunteer police departments. You've got like the reserve deputies and stuff like that. Guilty, but at one point, but we all end up having different standards for what's there's the citizens' expectations, but then there's also the fire service bar, right? And we all need to be at the same bar of at least our goals. Our goal is to search any capable spot that we can search, any place the conditions allow us to, versus just pulling up and seeing fire through the roof and going, oh, it's defensive because I saw that on Facebook. And so I guess maybe I'm being too optimistic or something, but how how do we fix this giant issue that we have in stories like Scott's, and our hands are tied without
hands
being
really tied though?
I don't know. That's kind of what I'm at. Like, are you going to go tell that family that, hey, they could have saved them because you've exhausted all your other efforts?
No, but I think in like Scott's case, and I don't know much about obviously the Western Pennsylvania Fire Service, but it sounds like his community expectation is, well, they're just a bunch of volunteers and they tried. So it's, kind of like a no harm, no foul. Like you said, the force of nature. Now, ultimately, Scott is fighting the uphill battle. He's left in the middle of the meadow of trying to increase training, become more knowledgeable. I can't believe that in 2021 we're still having pissant arguments about who's closer. And I mean, this stuff is so archaic that no wonder that they had a negative outcome. They can't even cooperate with the neighbors. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's almost like a time warp thing going backwards, or the community doesn't expect much because there's nobody there, or they only go to 50 runs a year. I mean, how do you expect them to be good at that? Or I don't know, but it's that's spooky to hear still in 2021 for me.
Yeah, and I just can't imagine. Like, I know, and we talked about this with our community's expectations, and I was still on the same department as you, where if the citizens are okay with us only being staffed from 8 to 4, then they're okay with that. They know the risks, they're willing to pay with whatever. Like, I get that part. I just can't imagine that any citizen's okay with, they were on scene, they knew where the victim was, and the victim, they didn't even go in to try and get the victim in any form or fashion.
Doubt.
A VES, an aggressive interior attack, a whatever. Some dude with a freaking concrete block to jump in the window and just try and go in and get that person.
Now
we've got kids that go back in with their family. They go back in for their, Eli. I've got the stickers ready to go on something from Brothers in Battle. You've got Eli, a little kid willing to go back in for his brother. You've got people willing to go back in for their dogs. And we got wuss ass firefighters standing outside, not doing their job. I refuse to believe the citizens are okay with that.
Right, but I'm not picking on Scott here again, but he's got a guy who won't go on a roof. But what if that rig showed up out of that volunteer house after 10 minutes with the guy that's afraid to go in and a pump operator? I mean, again, I'm not picking on Scott's situation. I'm just
and that could easily be any of our departments. That example is a great jumping off point, because I'm sure for Scott's story, we can all probably think of something that was either really close to that, or maybe it was that story without a victim. It was a savable structure, and I'm pretty sure. Let me consult my notes here. Yeah, some risk to save property still on there. So even if there's no victim, we're still saying we're going to take some risk to save their property. And I'm sick of handing people their wet shit that we could have saved if we had just done things tactically correct. So back to being angry.
Yeah, I mean,
I hear you. I hear you. And I guess that's where it's like, do you kick those people off your department, or is the issue then you're low on staffing, or do you at least call mutual aid like that department didn't do? I get that part too, but you're still delayed. You don't know if you're really going to save them. And I get it, but it should be their last best chance.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not used to operating in that world, so it's hard for me to relate, because those were the stories you heard when you got on 30 years ago of how we beat the township to that fire at Bates and River Road, and we didn't talk to them for 20 years damn near. And they still hated us. And then, we all got to play together, and now look at us.
Out of necessity.
But it's chummier. I mean, it's
yes, absolutely. No, and I'm saying the catalyst became like everybody was hurting for people, and now it's like, well, I guess we got to make friends again. But it's gone really well,
right?
Through different routes and just people understanding that like that stuff was dumb. But I guess, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Scott. I wish he was closer. I think that's the hidden diamond in the rough that nobody appreciates it. And of course, again,
Scott, I think he's trying to recruit you. Are you willing to move to Northwest Ohio?
But and again, the fella has to worry about getting elected. Well, what the piss is that? I'm sorry, Scott. I'm not picking on you, but I feel sorry for you being stuck in the middle of the meadow, and I don't know how to tell you to overcome some of this stuff other than continue training, do the right thing, and don't let the bastards grind you down.
It's tradition, man. We vote. It's tradition. Come on, Josh.
So
I think too, citizens, they really don't care. Citizens
As long as it
want
wasn't them.
Yeah. What's that?
What'd you say, Mike?
What'd you say, Mike?
Said they don't care as long as it wasn't them.
Yeah, they don't care. They
Then
want
they-
3 things, and as long as they have 3 things, they're happy. When they call 911, they want the cops, the fire department, and they want their trash picked up. That's the 3 things that they want. Other than that, they don't care. They see the fire department show up, well, they did their thing.
So
And they
so
don't
again, I
look into
ask
it.
you, if we know, even though their expectation is going to be lower than ours, but our expectation can be as, and bear with me here, as low as go in and try and save the person trapped in the building, if you can, if there's not fire blowing out of every window or the window where that person was said to be, but they could still be in the hallway trying to get out. If our standard is higher, when or do we become complicit in that next department's death? Like, I feel guilty if I don't say something. Is that wrong? Should I just say, well, their citizens know what to expect because all that department does is just let people burn up? That doesn't feel right to me.
Yes, but you also have to have the audience to aim it at.
Oh,
And so, I mean, do they even care? I mean, because it's just what Jason just said. I mean, the family of this deceased person might care, but anybody else going to have the same outrage? I don't know. There's volunteers. They go on 50 calls. What do you want out of
what if it's not a volunteer department? What if it's it's like a full-time department with 10 stations?
When I was on Toledo and we took over for Ottawa Hills, the difference in the inner city of Toledo, I would give you a paycheck if you could point out 2 times where we had salvage operations as a component of firefighting operations. And believe me, we had the fucking staff to do it because there were, there's 30 guys crawling in that house in 4 minutes or less. In Ottawa Hills, which is the upper class neighborhood as far as money goes, that Toledo took over, there were salvage covers and booties that you had to put on your feet if you went in on an EMS call, like you were from Molly Maid, because we didn't want to F up their carpets. You go in the inner city, you're walking in your fire gear with the schmutz from 3 fires.
Trying not to mess up your gear.
And dragging it into their house and not giving a shit. So just like in life, people will treat you as, when people say, oh, that guy treated me like shit. Well, you allowed him to. People will allow us to treat them to the level that they are accustomed. So maybe we need to raise their expectations of service as well.
Ooh, that's an
And
interesting twist.
that's where I think it's got to start.
So we need the public to know what? How do we get that message to the public? Going back to the example of no matter what size department,
we have meet and greets, or we have Toledo got the public information officer going now a couple of years back. So instead of us getting bitched at while we're standing in line at the grocery store after eating salad for 5 weeks and chicken, and the one day we're going to splurge on some good looking steaks and a couple of lobster tails, invariably some jackass citizen in line goes, oh geez, well, isn't it enough that we're paying for your cable bill? We don't get to eat like that. And then we have to turn around and delicately explain to them that the only thing that the city provides us is a stove and a rack to sleep in with a prison mattress on it. And most stations have saved up enough money in their house fund to buy decent mattresses, lazy boys or green chairs. People don't know what they don't know because we don't provide access to it. And I think the fear is that there's going to be a boomerang effect, that once they know those expectations, oh shit, we got to live up to them all the time now.
if they even care. And I think Jason hit on that really well, is that you could tell them and they don't care until it's them. You know, I remember another firefighter from another major city was talking about he had a bunch of guys that were pissed they were doing brownouts of stations. And he was like, okay, what's the nearest department that covers? He's like, do you live in the city? They're like, no. What's the nearest department that covers you? I don't know. Are they full-time, part-time, volunteer? I don't know. You are a firefighter and you don't know this. You really think anybody gives a shit in inner city, almost said the city's name, about which stations are browned out and it's going to take an extra 45 seconds for somebody to get there? Maybe 5 minutes, if that, somewhere in that range. If you don't care and you know this, why do you think anyone else is? And so maybe that's part of you guys should be charging me by the hour, because maybe that's just part of what I need to accept, is that if something like that happens, it's not on us to try and convince the citizens to care. But how do you balance out when you hear about that? How do you balance out your caring and your concern for maybe your family or friends or just the citizens you've never met before that live in that jurisdiction? Where's the line of responsibility?
Were you alive back when the contract with America came out of one of the houses of representatives or Congress or whatever, where the Republicans tried to do we're going to make a contract with the citizens to let them know what we're going to deliver should they put us in power? Maybe we need to have some sort of, at least in our jurisdiction where we're pushing for a levy every couple of years, a contract of these should be your expectations of us. Should you provide us or, bless us with the funding for a new ambulance, more paid part-time staffing, et cetera. While it will be somewhat of a tax burden, et cetera, this is what you're going to get in return. Hand a ingredients list with a warranty attached, so to speak.
I got two things to say. The first one is, no, I was not alive. It was 1985. I was born in 88. Just to twist that knife. Second of all, so sorry,
88?
everyone. 88.
Where'd your mom go on spring break?
Always that same question. If I didn't look so much like my dad, Tony, I'd be concerned. I'm a little concerned I'm part Klein because they were on a cruise, but we won't go into that. We'll see if he watches now. Second thing is, my brother had a great point when we were talking about this earlier, and I wish he wasn't sleeping through this one, but he did have a long night at work and we kept him up all day to talk about this stuff. So I understand. His point was twofold. One, even if the citizens don't know exactly what to expect, what do they think a firefighter does? Half the time they don't know we do EMS. For those of us who do both, they don't know that we're doing EMS too. They're like, oh, the ambulance drivers are here. Okay, cool. Like, yeah, I do that too, but sure, whatever. I mean, it says fire rescue on the side, but you think whatever you want. So you've got that part of it. And then the other part is, oh, they're going to run into a burning building and pull me out. And so that's where I'm like, what's the real expectation? And so Dan's example, my brother's example, was like, you come home, he comes home to his kids. I do not have any as far as I know. No messages on the phone. My brother comes home to his kids. What do his kids think he does as a firefighter? They know he hugs them every day on the way out the door, just like our parents hugged us as police officers, just in case. They will at some point in their lives know there's a risk that he's not coming home because he is running into burning buildings. And Dan's question was, how are you one of those firefighters that goes into work and then doesn't do that and come home to your kids or go out in your community where people are saying thank you and you don't even do that? Is that expectation already there? Or is that just a character that, as long as they don't know that we're willing to just stand outside and somebody's burning on the inside, we're good?
It's funny you say that. So I worked as a policeman in a small 1.8 square mile municipality for 26 years. And we have a state-run school here, very, very busy. I can honestly say that my 26-year career, I got paid to fight with college students, and that's what we did. But we were very quick on how we responded. There's 2, 3, 4 guys on, and when you called and there was 2 guys duking it out in your front yard, we were there in 90 seconds and we took care of business. I live in a municipality. I live outside that 1.8 square miles, and I have neighbors who say, oh, I called the state police the other day, there was a guy over here. I go, oh, when did they get here? He said it only took him 3 hours. I'm like, 3 hours? Like, what do you mean 3 hours? Oh yeah, I called at 4 and they stopped by at 7 o'clock and they went looking for him. But they don't know any better. To them, that's the police response in the township that we live in, and they're okay with that. And there was an amendment that tried to go through to bring our police department to the 26 square miles of the larger municipality that surrounded where I worked. And they were like, well, we don't need that. We have state police. We have great response. And when you hear them talk to somebody, it says, how long does it take to get a cop? About 90 seconds in a borough, depending on, what else they're doing or, who they're fighting with. And, to hear people say, well, yeah, I reported my car broken into. Yeah, they were there in about 5 hours. You're like, well, what the heck are you talking about? But that they don't have any other, they don't judge it off at anything else.
Well, and we've had that, moving from the big city in this area to the suburbs where I worked with Chief Druid, and same thing. They're like, it took you guys 15 minutes to get here. It's like, yeah, because we're not staffed after 4 p.m. We have to drive to the station. We have to wait for enough people. We pull the ambulance. We come to your house, and now we're here. And when you had that perspective shift where they were in a place like your town, and then they moved to where the state police are patrolling, completely different set of expectations. And
well, that leads kind of something I wanted to bring up was even drilling down more basically when we look at our citizens, what do they even know about us, period? How many of my citizens in my town could you walk up to and say, do you have a paid per call, a part-time, a full-time department? What is the majority makeup of your department?
Yeah.
And I can almost guarantee you most of them are going to be, oh, well, they're full-time staffed.
Right.
Yeah. And a paid per what? What does that mean? Yeah.
Our department doesn't have the word volunteer in our name. It's the Indiana Fire Association. It doesn't say volunteer. We fight with them all the time. We guys are paid. Who's paid? That's what volunteer right there. They don't get it.
No. And we had that when we did our strategic planning process at Rossford. That was one of the things that came up was, putting signs on the doors to tell people, call 911 from here because we're not always here. Even if we're staffed, we're not always there. And on top of that, we were talking about like minimum staffing and the things that we wanted and like improving our response times. And I give credit to him because he was thinking in a completely different way that we were. And that was the joy of having people from other backgrounds and stuff. But the county sheriff said, have they complained? How many phone calls have you gotten from the citizens complaining about your response time? We all looked over at Josh and he's like, none. And then we just started telling people, call and complain. if they told us on scene, it's like, you need to call and complain and then we can do stuff. But if we don't know your expectation, but it's always after the fact, right? It's always once it affects me, now it's, why did it take you 10 minutes to show up when my baby wasn't breathing? Well, why didn't you know that before? But it's because we know, and they don't need to know because again, they default to thinking, we're always there. We're sitting at the firehouse playing cards at the Dalmatian, waiting for them to call.
Here's something that might cause some controversy.
Oh God, we haven't even gotten to Euro helmets yet. I think we're pushing that to next week.
So
and ambulances, transport engines. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking about strategic planning, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, in my OFE class, I had to evaluate 26 strategic plans. And there were some departments that included the citizens, and there were some departments that did not include citizens in with it. What's your take on it?
They either included or did not include citizens in the strategic planning process?
Yeah, there's some departments that did it all internal with internal stakeholders.
No.
And then there's other departments that did it with both.
Granted, I've only done it once. I've only done the process once, but I read the book and that other book says that I'm an expert now. So I don't think you can do it without, I think the people on the outside, the business owners, the religious leaders, the elected officials, we invited so many people. We invited like 40 people and I think 6 ended up showing up, but hey, we'll take the people we can get. But there's a twofold benefit to that. One, you get that perspective from the business owner who wants to look at your fire department as a business and kind of explain, no, it's kind of core to, it's an insurance policy. You're paying for an insurance policy. How big of a policy do you want? And then the other part is that as you explain some of this stuff, some of those people were sitting there, some of our business owners who own, 10 properties in the city, we're sitting there telling them, yeah, we're only staffed from 8 to 4. We got 2 people. We'd have to wait for this. We got these departments coming mutual aid. And they're like, wait, what? They had no idea. And so who are they going to go back and talk to? They're going to go back and talk to the other business owners at the next meeting they go to that's not related to the fire department. And so you build in these cheerleaders essentially for your cause, or at least information spreaders. So you're networking information out that the other 34 people who didn't show up aren't going to get. But those people that are influential and want to be involved in your strategic planning process because they do want their voice heard and they do want to know what's going on, they're going to be the ones talking at church. They're going to be the ones talking at a business. They're going to be the ones talking at their business or to their renters. They're going to be pushing your information as long as you can break it down to that level. And on top of that, one of the other great benefits to that is they're breaking it down to a level that another person can understand, because I don't know if you know this, but we're really bad at sometimes at explaining what the hell, like if you, when you say paid per call and somebody goes, what the hell is that? Volunteer. Well, then they're like, okay, I get volunteer. We don't need to get in the nuance of it. They're going to translate your firefighter speak and pass that along. So doing an internal only strategic plan, if you have, if you're just trying to get your shit together, I could see that. But if you're really trying to do a strategic plan for the future of the department that involves any need to go to the citizens and ask for money or ask for, you know what, that's probably the only one. I'm going to stop at my thumb. If you're asking the citizens for money, they should be involved in what their money is being spent on. And your expectations are not necessarily going to meet their expectations. And sometimes that's going to suck because you'll want so much more. We all want 50 people at the station at any time to roll all our rigs. We're not going to get that. They're not going to pay for that. But what will they pay for? What do they want? And if you don't bring them into that discussion, you have no idea. And so I'm really not.
You can pique their interest with something as simple as, look, what will offset the increase in your taxes should you pass this levy is a better rating of the fire department. So lower insurance rates for your business insurance or your homeowner's insurance, et cetera, that you have, a higher ISO rating.
And that's another thing that came up was how many people care about 1 point higher in an ISO rating?
How much does it affect their insurance? Get
right,
that
and that's
number
the
out
question.
to them.
Right.
Be able to answer that.
And if it's like $10 a year, and that's the question, because that was the other question that I think it was the sheriff that brought up. He's like, you guys keep talking about these ISO ratings. What do we care? Why is it a thing? Does it really change anything? And we're sitting there like, oh God, that's a good question. And yeah, we need to know. And then even still, okay, so it saves you $100 a year, but you're paying $90 in the extra levy, and then you start shooting yourself in the foot potentially. I don't know. There's no right answer.
To the money savings, you're going to get a crew here in 5 minutes instead of 15.
True.
When it's your kid that's not breathing or your dad that's laying there, stroking out, does that matter? What matters more to you, money or preservation of life and property?
And I think most of the time it's money because it doesn't affect everybody in the community.
Well, because people
money affects everybody.
They're like, oh, my house is never going to burn down. I'm never going to get in a car accident. That's why I don't wear a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Well, and here we go. So Barrett is speaking good truth. So remember, we invited like 40 or 50 people to this thing, and 6 ended up staying through the process.
Great input. Awesome people. Just 6.
Yes, the 6 that we had were great, but it goes back to that whole expectation thing. We're telling you that we're trying to build this place for the future. We're asking for your input, and we're at 6. So do they give a shit or not? I mean,
better
the 6
utilization of social media.
Well, and look too, I mean, as a reporter, I covered school board meetings, I covered city council meetings, I covered, zoning meetings, and the only people that showed up were the people that were angry most of the time, or the people that just like going, or the reporters. It takes motivation for someone to want to be involved in that. And I was just as guilty of it too. When I was the union president at Rossford, and all of a sudden we realized we had a problem with getting an engine. And I started going to the safety committee meetings, and it's like, oh God, that's part of why we didn't have anybody here to talk about it.
So use Scott's situation. Use Scott's situation of, hey, person may or may not have been able to be saved, but we'll never know because we don't have a working relationship with the department next door. Is that the town you want to live in? That will piss people off. I mean, the algorithm for all the social media is happy stuff and puppies get 2 clicks, say something about one political party or the other, and in 20 minutes, the thread's getting shut down because people are calling each other names.
Well, and I'll say
pissed.
too, for all the people, I want to see good news on the news. Every day, our web stats at the TV station I worked at, both TV stations I worked at over 8 years, all the stats were always the bad news. And it's like, people click the bad news. I'm sorry. But anyway, Chad, you had your hand up. Intentionally? Unintentionally?
Yeah, it was intentionally. Like one of the things that like the last levy that we tried, or actually passed, I shouldn't say tried to pass, for a 3 mil permanent, going door to door with flyers opened my eyes on, I don't want to say how ignorant the citizens are, but how ignorant the citizens are. And then you had this one guy that had a vengeance to destroy the fire department based on a previous experience with a previous thing that was 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatnot, with different trustee bodies and such. So I'm losing my train of thought and my ability to speak here.
So you've got the people that don't care, you've got the people that had no idea, and you've got the people that are pissed because you screwed them over 20 or 15 years ago.
Right.
You've almost got like 3 categories of citizen you've got to deal with, and you got to appease them all and figure out what the hell they all want.
And then you got some that live on the southern side of the town, or southern side of our township, that have an address that starts with a G and an R, and they believe that the fire department over the river should be coming to their house because it's closer.
Yeah.
Ideally, yeah, it should happen that way in a perfect world. But yeah.
Patrick, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with on the public, the ignorance of the public not knowing. We just actually started my department. We're all volunteer. We're trying to do something new on our social media. We posted a firefighter how much gear costs. An air pack, $6,000. People have no freaking clue. We're in the process now replacing all of our hose. We just did hose testing, and I've got 3 pallets that are probably 4 foot, 5 foot tall, stacked of hose. A project's going to be about $60,000. As all volunteer department donations are key for us. People had no clue on what, a pair of boots, $350, gloves, $100. People just have no clue. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did at Providence when we were trying to pass that levy is we had an open house, although I think maybe 15, 20 people showed up. We had all of our equipment sitting out with price tags on it, like it was the Price is Right. And school boards with like trifolds that you did in elementary school with your project of how much gear costs versus 10 years ago versus now. How much a life pack costs. When they look at a life pack and say, how does this thing cost $40,000? I can go buy 2 cars for that.
Really? 2 cars? I keep buying the wrong cars.
I agree.
Providence Township standards are a little lower.
I just keep getting leases I shouldn't afford. Good decision making. Anybody else feel tired? Usually this is like a builder upper, and I feel like I kind of accidentally set this up to be like,
But look, you started bitching, and look at the good conversation that took place. Let that be a lesson.
The bitching is good?
Well, that it got everybody's attention and it got input. If we were just sitting here talking about,
Euro helmets and transport engines?
Well, transport engines would probably get it going too, but I think Euro helmets really got effectively decided last week.
This is seriously going to be like the Matt Damon. We didn't have time for Matt Damon tonight thing from Jimmy Kimmel. We are eventually going to get to Euro helmets and transport engines as this like super controversial topic. but this became kind of timely, and I needed to vent, and I figured you guys could relate. And it's great to see so many new faces, and Kevin's Irish Spring is cracking me up because I don't totally get it, but I like it. And also I can smell it right now. Ah, see, I always think of like a crate, but that is a box. Yeah, you're right. We should just call this Soapbox Sundays now. We should just change it. No, I like the kitchen table thing, and I like the fact that I think it was Kyler earlier who actually said like, yeah, sitting around a kitchen table like this. Like, how cool is this that we got people from different states sitting around bitching about the same stuff? We can vent, we can come up with ideas, we can talk this stuff out. Yeah, we could solve the world's problems just like we do at the Engine House, right?
I think the biggest thing I've seen is might be a different state where I'm at, but it's the same freaking issues no matter where you go and where you're at. State, county, doesn't matter. Just all it is just a name on the building, just a different name.
I'm like that guy from Airplane. All of a sudden, I have a drinking problem. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I spilled water on myself for those of you listening as a podcast later, so you don't think this has turned into a different kind of meeting. But no, you're right. We all deal with the same stuff, just to different degrees, and I think the cool part about this group of people that changes every week is that we're all there's a soapbox. Now Kevin's got a soapbox behind him, and it's got my footprints on it. The cool thing is that we are people, I think, that if we're going to commit 2 hours to sitting here at a Zoom meeting just chatting about the fire service, we want to find ways to improve it. We know we're responsible for that in some form or fashion. And sometimes I think, like I was struggling with at the beginning of this call, and like I'll struggle with at the end of this kitchen table talk, is at what point do you have to just go, that's beyond what I can handle. That's beyond what I can control. That's beyond what I have in front of me. And I just can't do much about it. And I think sometimes we're going to spin our wheels just to try. And other times, other times we're going to succeed. And I think we have to keep trying, and we have to support each other in trying, and we have to support each other in leaving the fire service better than we found it, no matter how little or how much we're able to contribute or push or question or change. And I guess one of the things that we were telling a rookie today at a department we hung out at for a little while was, no matter who's in charge of your department, no matter who's above you as an officer, no matter what's going on in your department, you control how you feel about the fire service. And I'll tell you, just doing this thing, I second guessed starting a training page because everybody was doing it when I started. I just wanted a place to post. I wanted to be anonymous because I just gotten on my career department. So I wanted to come up with a name, Fireground Training, just generic from looking at my dad's radio as a kid. And I've thought about shutting it down. I have shut it down once or twice. I've debated teaching. I've asked myself, why the hell am I doing this? And then I've got people texting me every week, like, hey, what are we talking about this week? That's a cool feeling. And it's not because it's me, it's because there are enough people out there who care, and they just need to find other people who care. So keep being the people who care. Kevin, from behind your Irish Spring, you have a question or a statement?
I just wanted to say, I don't think there's an end where, like, when do we just throw in the towel and give up? I think it's insurmountable for one person individually, but you're starting the conversation where as a group we can make the change. So we may run into brick walls along the way, but as the group gets bigger, you're going to be able to make positive change because it's got a bigger voice. So I don't think there is a give up point. I think it's just, how much shit are you willing to put up with and push forward?
Are you a union firefighter? You know what? Never mind. That's a rhetorical question. But yeah, no, you're right. I know that was kind of the joke. But yeah, that bigger voice. I guess I didn't really think about it like that. And yeah, I mean, to have this many people on the same page and to see people, it's almost refreshing, but also incredibly frustrating to see people a state away dealing with the same crap. And it's like, why? Like, I want to fix it. We are fixers. I want to fix the fire service, not make it the way I want to see it, but just fix it. and we can do that together, and we can keep talking about stuff here. And Bob, Captain Grogan.
Well, I got just one quick thing here, Barrett.
Yeah.
And Tony kind of put it in perspective as far as, you know, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to really push our own thing as one person. But he had mentioned too that, you know, when you're the one standing at the front of the room venting and you hear crickets behind you, we have to find a way to get the passion about everybody to be honest and forthright. Otherwise, we can't move forward if it's just one individual, because that person's a rebel. That guy is the guy that's the troublemaker in the eyes of the administration. So when we do this as a group, and I mean, I've been through several chiefs where I've stood up and I said, like Tony said, it's like, holy crap, I'm up here alone. And only way that this is going to move forward is to be able to do that. And like I said, you know, as far as what Tony had said is that, you know, you got to be willing to give something up. And it's hard for people to say, well, I really like doing this, so I'm going to just shut my mouth and stand behind and hope somebody else takes the hit and it gets better. I mean, we have to find a way as a collaborative group to make it work. And I don't know how we change that because, you know, we got too many people. It goes right back to the fear that you were talking about. So that's my rant, but.
No, I like it. And you were holding back the whole time and there you're sitting. No, I'm glad you chimed in because that makes sense. And that
I mean, we're fighting the deal right now when you guys are all talking about your social media platforms. I have a third party administrator right now. We haven't even got our platform going, but even our platform, if I wanted to put out a road closure, I have to go through a third party administrator to get permission. And 3 days later, I tell you about my road closure. That's how ours is going to work. And it's frustrating, but you know, how do you fix that?
An unofficial Facebook page, but I didn't say that out loud. Of Waterville, I'm sorry, the whatever fire department you work at, fire association.
Concerned Citizens for.
Yeah, Friends of Rossford Fire. Oh, I'm sorry, that was our levy page. But I totally hear you, and yeah, and this stuff it's a lot, but I think together and knowing that we're going through it together definitely makes it easier. But you know, and knowing that, God, just knowing that we can have just knowing that there are other people who are like, this is screwed up, right? Just knowing that there's a standard that we think the fire service should live by, regardless of staffing or size or jurisdiction. Again, I've been lucky to work with every different kind of department, either for them or doing training for them. And I think the potential's there. And maybe I go back to, they don't know what they don't know. Maybe it's not a cop out. Maybe it is our responsibility to show them when we see it, because at one point I didn't see it either. There was a lot of stuff, like I gave him credit while he was here, but there's a lot of stuff Jake taught me at Perrysburg Township that I had no idea. And it's all made me a better firefighter because nobody ever thought to tell me, but somebody thought to tell him. It was probably his dad or somebody, one of his mentors. And we have to pass that on. And I think that's our responsibility to ourselves. First of all, we have to do the best we can, or else we're worthless to everybody else. Help the people around us, help our department, and then help other departments. And balancing that out to the point where you don't drive yourself crazy or feel like you're hitting a brick wall every 5 minutes, knowing that, you know, it's not worth it on your own. Like Kevin said, let's all get together and figure out what works and what doesn't.
Well, Jake brought up the one chief that we both have a fondness for. And one of the things he would say when you got butthurt about him being in your ass was, I love you enough to risk you. I love you and this job enough to risk you not liking me to make sure that we do it right.
Love that. And I don't know where I stand with that chief, but I respect the hell out of that chief for that kind of attitude. And I would, like Jake said, I would work for that guy. I would do whatever he tells me to do because I trust the hell out of him.
But that's a forward leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's something a lot of the people in the current positions are fearful of. You know, they don't want to step forward because they fear that their administrator or mayor or somebody's going to stomp on them. So having that kind of forthright is something that we need to push forward, and it's just not happening right now.
Well, and people are afraid of the guy's personality. It's they're judging the advice by their perceived perception of the person offering the advice or the leadership. It's not their style of leadership, or it rubs them the wrong way. So they lose the message because they either believe what they've heard from someone else, or they're unwilling to see the true intention behind the man's statement, and too worried about how he carries himself or their perception of how he carries himself.
And I'd say too, with what you just said, Bob, that if you're not willing to go to bat for your people, then it's time to GTFO. Sorry, like it's time for you to get out of the way and let somebody else go to bat for them. And if, like, I guess that's where I've always thought, you know, like the same thing as going to bat for a citizen. We talked about this earlier. You know, you got the recent example from a major city in the Midwest that somebody got written up or suspended. Maybe, I don't believe they got fired. I don't have this in front of me, but for transporting in an engine, in a non-transport engine, before we get on that topic. And it's like, I don't care if I get written up. They have to write me up for that, because if somebody's waiting 3 minutes for an ambulance and I didn't get written up, they're not going to be able to write up that idiot. So give me the write-up. I don't care. Why are we worried about a write-up or a suspension? I'll take a couple days off. And granted, I don't have a family I have to support, so I get there's elements there, but I still go home knowing I did the right thing. And God forbid I get fired for going into a building to VES when somebody told me, it's probably not safe. And I can see that it's safe and I can make that judgment call. And I tell them, hey, I'm going in. And if I didn't hear you say no, I'm taking that as a yes. And I get fired, there's going to be somebody else who's willing to hire me and go, I can't believe they fired you for that. And I'm very much a stickler for, like, if your protocols don't work, fix them, and make sure if you don't freelance, you ask for permission, and usually you're told yes. Like, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, just go break the rules and do whatever the hell you want. But also, like, if you're not willing to take the risks that come with it, if you're not willing to be the fire chief and risk losing your job to do the right thing, or being a firefighter and risk losing your job for doing the thing that's going to make it, screw liability, screw getting written up, screw the suspension, screw losing your job, looking yourself in the mirror the next morning and know you did everything for that citizen because that's the thing you raised your hand and said you would do. Or when you got sworn in the bay and they were giving you your t-shirt, that's what that freaking t-shirt meant. So if I can't do that, screw getting sued, screw getting what I'll get sued, but I'm not going to get sued because of something that's going to make me look in the mirror and go, I really screwed that up and somebody died because of me. And if you're not willing to do that in this career, but people get comfortable and they're getting paid and they don't want to give up that spot and they don't want to make waves. And it's like, but we have to make waves to make change happen. And if you're not going to be the one willing to do that, you have to move aside and let somebody else do it. Who's willing to risk it, willing to risk being in a position for 6 months to see improvement and then go find something else. That's my take on that. Because you're right. You need the forward leaders. You need the people who are making the upfront investment in their people. You know, I think that's something I've seen a lot of is people get ticked off or they micromanage at fire scenes or accident scenes. And it's like, why are you micromanaging? Well, because they weren't doing it right. Well, why and going back to, I think Scott said it earlier, the 50-year fire chief or the 20-year fire chief or the 10-year fire chief that as soon as they became the chief, they stopped going to training. Well, no wonder they're not doing it the way you expected them to do. You don't know what they're going to do because you weren't there. So make the upfront investment, be there for the training, set the standards you want through your officers or on your own. And then everybody's on the same page, but you can't be the conductor of the orchestra if you don't go to the rehearsals. And you also can't be the conductor of the orchestra if you don't stand up and say, no, we're going to do this goofy thing because it's going to help us on social media and get people to show up to our concerts because nobody really wants to listen to classical music all night. And that's my equivalent of going to the whoever it may be and saying, you know, this is kind of a time sensitive thing and we need to interact with our public if we need support in levies. So maybe we have our own social media presence and do our own thing because it's our department. But why risk it when you can be comfortable and cozy and just continue your existence as is? And I would argue social media is less of a concern. But if that's what's happening with social media, what's happening with the operations of that department? And it's not limited to your department. It's not limited to, again, everything we talk about here, we know from just talking about it is applicable somewhere else. So I'm not at all targeting any, just like I said at the beginning. If you think we're talking about a specific department or a specific incident or a specific region, we're not. It's the fire service. It's all interchangeable. Somewhere, someplace, this has happened more than once. Everything we've talked about. And so if you're thinking, oh, they're talking about me, or I can't believe it, and you're getting mad, maybe you've got some reflection to do. Because we didn't say it was you. Your defensiveness said it was you. On that note, I'll probably get some emails tomorrow. Thank you guys very much. We did a half hour more than we usually do, which is awesome. I have no complaints about that. If it weren't for the fact that that I've got to make a couple of phone calls before I go to bed tonight, we would just keep going. But also, we got to save some stuff for next week. So next week, if nothing else comes up, we'll talk about Euro helmets again and whatever else comes up. So fireground4.com is the website. There's a link to the YouTube page. There's a link to the Facebook page. Post your ideas, discussion points. If there's anything that comes up later, my email address is on there. There's a contact us form. You can sign up for the newsletters, all that good stuff. Fireground4.com. This will be posted as a podcast later. Share it with your friends. And tonight, I think, was the biggest turnout we've had so far. At most, we had 22 people, which is awesome. It didn't get rowdy, which was great. I forgot to let some people in, which I'll work on. But thank you guys all so much for being here, contributing to this awesome conversation, making me feel a little better tonight. And hopefully we can keep doing this together. So you guys all have a wonderful night. For those of you getting snow, stay warm, stay dry, and only eat the white stuff.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh my God, and
All
happy
lonely
Valentine's
fuckers.
Day.
I love you guys.
That's the other thing is I got to go over to my girlfriend's house now. So I wasn't going to say that, but now that Valentine's Day came up, yeah, we can't go to 11 tonight. Sorry, guys.
Because you can't go to 11?
Ooh.
Tell him I said hi.
You
Oh,
have a
finally,
girlfriend.
finally, Scotty Thornburg speaks up. All I needed to do was set up the girlfriend part, and there he is.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, brother, what's up, man?
Miss you, man.
I know. We had some days
What's
up there.
going
at
on,
Threes.
Thorny?
Nothing, man. How you doing, Kev?
Not too bad.
Oh my God. All right. Next week, Euro helmets, and we're going to try and get Scott to talk more. I'm going to lead with something that he can joke about right off the beginning. Thank you guys so much. Spread the word. And only because the more voices we have, the more interesting shit we get to talk about. So thank you all so much. Anybody have any final thoughts or final words before we go?
Be safe, brothers.
What he said.
And take risks. I've changed my be safe. I used to tell my parents to be safe. Now I tell my brother to take risks. Because it's not a safe job. But I understand the sentiment. I'm just mixing it up. I'm being a jerk. But yeah, be safe and take risks all at the same time.
Good night, everybody. See you
All
guys.
right. Good night, folks.
Good night,
Thanks so
gentlemen.
much.
Good night.